See?
Okay.
Is that, I mean, isn't that one?
Okay.
Yeah, but I thought that was,
And hello. Good afternoon. We can just have everyone take a seat, please.
yeah, right. Where was that? Oh,
And the meeting is now called to order.
There is one here underneath that.
Okay, good afternoon. Design Review Board 1, public meeting of April 17th, 2008 is called to order. Please refrain from talking amongst yourselves during the meeting, and please turn off or put on vibrate all cell phones and pagers. If you need to talk, please leave the meeting room. Anyone who wishes to speak, including applicants, is asked to completely fill out one of the speaker cards provided at the table by the front door and submit it to staff. You will be called to present a case or speak on a specific item as desired. Anyone who wishes to be re-noticed about a project must completely fill out one of the postcards provided at the table by the front door and submit it to staff to receive notice of subsequent meetings. Current DRB agendas are available by calling our DRB hotline at 818-548-3171 or by visiting our website at www.ci.glendale.ca.us. A handout describing the procedures of the meeting, possible board decisions, and DRB reconsideration and appeals is available at the table by the front door. Please note that appeals must be filed within 7 calendar days of the DRB decision date. The chairperson may reorder agenda items at his or her discretion. So with that said, our chairperson, Mr. Chairman Art Simonian, is not here and will be running late. We ask that the Design Review Board pick a chairman or chairperson pro tem. Do I have a motion?
I move Mr. Aliano be the chair pro tem.
All right, and second?
Second?
Second? Yes, all in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Hopefully it won't come back to haunt me.
Switch it up.
Easy enough.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you very much.
We'll have to switch that in half an hour.
Okay, now in terms of a roll call, Board Member Aliano is running late. Board Member Ellis?
Present.
Board Member Insua?
Here.
Board Member Yu?
Here.
Board Member
Sheet number.
Simonian. Unfortunately, we have... Okay, that's right. Okay. Report regarding posting of agenda. The agenda for this meeting was posted on the bulletin board outside City Hall at or before 5 p.m. on April 10th, 2008. We have no staff announcements at this time. We do have a request by the applicant to move item D. This would be for 350 North Glendale Avenue, case number 1-PDR 2007-071A, to the front of the agenda.
Okay. Is there a motion to move this item up in the agenda?
It would just be whether or not it is up to the board's pleasure to
Yes,
move
it's
the
fine.
item up.
Okay.
So, in this case, and just for your information, the very first item on today's agenda, which is address number 1062 Allen Avenue, Design Review Board case number 1-PDR-2007-114A. This particular item is being continued to a date uncertain. It will be publicly re-noticed. There were issues regarding zoning and possible standards variance requirements.
Okay.
So that particular item, again, for 1062 Allen Avenue has been taken off the calendar and will be postponed to a date uncertain. With that said, going to the first item under the reorganized agenda is actually my case. So it would allow me to continue on. Again, this is case number 1-PDR 2007-071B. The project is located at 350 North Glendale Avenue. This would be on the northeast corner of Glendale and Lexington Avenues, directly across the street from the Whole Foods Market. The applicant is Envirotecture, care of Cameron Ariai, and the owner is Glendale Garden LLC. The project consists of constructing a new 3-story, approximately 37,000 square foot commercial building. It includes retail, fast food, medical office, and office. There is a 3-level 170 parking space semi-subterranean and subterranean garage, and on an approximately 27,700 square foot lot zone C2, community commercial. Now, all existing structures will be demolished. The structures currently on site is a vacant gas station, a big and tall shop that's still under operation, and a vacant automotive repair. The board last saw this particular project as a preliminary review on July 19th, 2007, at which time the board voted unanimously to allow the project to proceed to final review, and that was for board members Sanfrini, Garpetian, and Zarabians only. Board member Aliano and Simonian were absent on that preliminary review date. A slightly revised project was submitted for the first time submittal for final review, and this was back on November 29th, 2007. The board voted unanimously at that point in time to return the project for redesign with 7 comments, and at that point, board members Aliano, Simonian, you, and Zarabians were all present. So board member Insua, this is your first time seeing this particular project. This, again, is your second time for final review. Now, the project under CEQA has been reviewed. There was a mitigated negative declaration prepared. That would be mitigated negative declaration 2007-28. That mitigated negative declaration was adopted by the design review board back on the November 29th hearing date. Again, just to give you a brief summary, this is a C2 community commercial zone, general plan community services. The project is located in study area 6 of the Glendale Avenue urban design guidelines for commercial uses. Neighboring uses, again, include the Whole Foods on the westerly side of Glendale Avenue. There is a 1-story bank to the north across Lexington. And then kitty corner, on the northwest corner, there is a vitamin store that's a 1-story structure. There are multifamily residential uses to the rear on the easterly side. Now, the 7 comments that were made by the Design Review Board back on November 29th included the following, and I'll just go through them one by one with staff's comments as well. The first one was to consider relocating the driveway closer towards the easterly interior property line and further away from the Glendale-Lexington intersection, resulting in the relocation of the surface parking near the building. Now, again, this is, forgive us, it's a little bit difficult to read in the black and white. The previous project had a 2-way driveway on Lexington Avenue. This was buffered to the east by a stairwell and a trash area, and you had your surface parking directly adjacent to the interior property line. After much comment, the board, as I just stated, requested that the driveway actually be flipped to the exterior of the building, have the surface parking tucked in underneath, and then obviously resulting in multiple changes throughout the building. As you see here on the current set of plans that were submitted, the driveway has been relocated to the exterior. The surface parking now is provided directly adjacent to the building. You still have the ramp that goes down to the 3 levels of semi-subterranean garage, and you still only have although this is a 2-way driveway off Lexington, there is an exit-only driveway that goes on to Glendale Avenue. And so that exit-only Glendale driveway has been maintained in this current proposal. Item number 2 was to rework the treatment of the northeast corner of the building. It's best if you see here in this particular perspective drawing, there was a treatment facade wall that extended up through the entire length of the building with a parking sign to the side of it. And then you had this blue fin that wrapped around the side. And again, the parking went just on the inside of that treatment wall. And this wall was directly adjacent to the multifamily residential and the nursery school that's directly to the rear as well. Now, again, with the relocation of the driveway, this particular corner element has been obviously integrated more so into the building. You'll notice that the sign projects out from the stairwell around here. Individuals go down Lexington driveway and now around to the outside of the building. So again, this corner treatment has been reworked and integrated more into the building. Number 3, reevaluate the pedestrian walkthrough in the center of the building, providing a more activated, transparent break or wedge. As you noticed here, and is best seen in this particular site plan, you'll notice that this is the wedge that caused quite a bit of discussion before. There were not significant, but there were changes in elevation requiring ramping, requiring handicap accessibility. The parking to the rear was on a lower level, and it's best if you take a look and see here. These are the before elevations and cross sections. These are the after elevations and cross sections. And you'll notice that previously you had quite a bit of a change in grade, approximately, so that necessitated, stairways and ramping systems. There was not the ability to directly see into the rear or into the center of the building. The board had requested that that wedge or that pedestrian walkthrough be obviously much more transparent than what was previously proposed. By changing the parking and the surface parking and the driveway, there was also, fortunately, this resulting in a more level walkthrough. So no longer do you have changes in ramps and stairwells or whatnot, but there's a greater transparency just as a result of the leveling of the floor plane. Not only that, but the applicant has also addressed, and you'll notice here, whereas before you had the walkway through, you had to go up the stairs, down to the ramp and whatnot. Again, you have a clear-cut ramping system with just 2 stairs to the back. So there's that visual transparency directly to the rear surface parking, which you did not have before. There have been planters that have been obviously included along the side to make it more pedestrian friendly. You'll notice also that on the second level, and it's best also seen on the cut side where, as you notice here, the correct one, we'll go through the side, and there's also plantings on, good afternoon. If you can make note that Chairperson Simonian has joined us, please. So that the planters area overlooking on the second floor have been added. See, and it's best noted again here in this elevation, whereas before you had the double doors. These were the security doors that closed up. Now you have the security doors that are rolled up or flipped up, so that no longer do you have the security doors that would hinder any movement as well. So, again, all of these modifications added to the breaking up of the building, which is obviously more significantly transparent than the previous proposal. The 4th item was to restudy the elevation plane of the easterly rear facade. And again, this would be the current proposal, this would be the previous proposal, and this would be the elevation that faces the rear multifamily residential and the nursery school on Lexington Avenue. Aluminum trim has been added around the windows to create shadow lines, with the top trim slightly wider than the bottom ones. You'll notice here it adds for some visual interest with those aluminum trim shadow lines. Proposed corner windows further add to the architectural style of the fenestration pattern. The exterior is clad in a textured plaster. It's a fine acrylic finish. It's a trowel finish. Stucco reveals are used to organize the rear elevation as depicted on the colored elevations, and we just need to make sure that those are noted on the plans. The proposed rear elevations design is a more cohesively designed improvement over the one presented to the DRB back in November. This rear elevation, along with the south elevation, are intentionally distinctive from the 2 street facades, the north and west elevation, as you noticed here. This would be the rear elevation, and then this would be the south elevation. So these 2 elevations that face the interior property lines are somewhat more distinctive. They're somewhat less modern or less commercial looking than the elevations. This would be the Glendale Avenue elevation and then the Lexington Avenue elevation. So the architect has specifically designed the building as such that the two elevations facing the interior property lines and the multifamily residential uses have a somewhat distinctive finish, again, with the aluminum trimmed windows, a more subdued color pattern, and less what we would call a contemporary commercial look to them. Number 5 was to address the rhythm of the columns along the southerly portion of the front elevation, part of the building closest to the interior driveway off Glendale Avenue. If you recall, and you noticed, you can't really tell on the perspective drawing here, but there was a bit of discussion as to the rhythm of the columns from this northerly portion of the building. Here was the break, and then the southerly portion of the building that's closest to the southerly property line. In these columns, there was a little bit of comment made. Shouldn't the sequencing or the pattern be more similar or whatnot? It wasn't distinct enough to sort of warrant the two separate type of patterns. Again, the applicant has returned. There is a slight modification to have the building look more patterned, more cohesively done. Comment number 6, 2 to go, that is, provide a landscape and hardscape plan prepared by a licensed landscape architect focusing on the northwest corner seating area and the northeast corner adjacent to the nursery school and public areas on the second and third floor. And I apologize, it looks like I do not have that plan up, so what I'd like to do is take a moment to go ahead and put that plan up. I know that it was included in your packet there. And again, this is in discussion to the seating area on the corner of Lexington Avenue and Glendale Avenue, as well as the planter boxes in the break. So if you'd allow me just one moment, please.
Get out of your way.
You can put that cover in as well. Okay, thank you. The Seed Group, licensed landscape architects based in Torrance, essentially designed the landscaping and the hardscaping. The landscaped have proposed agave-type plants and festival grass in the northwest corner. Again, this was the more highly visible area. This would be the area that has the outdoor seating for the fast food establishments on the ground floor. On variety of plants and annuals for the glazed masonry planter boxes are used as accents on the second. It's this here. This would be the second floor and the third floor outdoor areas. And Boston ivory and flowering low shrubs will be planted along the easterly interior property line. And as you see here, we will also have palm trees, climbing vines and shrubs. The palm trees, again, don't have much to shield or to separate the rear residential, but again, they do provide what is required by code. There are Boston ivy plantings all along the southerly edge of the property. And most noted, I think, in terms of the landscaping and hardscaping plan, is the fact that the architect and the landscape architect have proposed, and these are the linear concrete interlocking pavers. This would be primarily on the ground floor, so there's some sort of cohesion from the exterior property line, from the front facade going to the rear parking. And these pavers are also used on the second floor open space and on the third floor landings as well. There are what's called concrete finish with glass particles. This type of surface treatment is proposed all along the property lines or within the property lines of the project adjacent to the public sidewalk. So you have the public sidewalk, then you will have all of the private property from the property lines to the edge of the building as the concrete glass particle type pavement, and then you have the elongated interlocking pavers directly with the portion in the break of the wedge. Lastly, there were previously proposed jacaranda trees along Glendale Avenue. Those were in the very preliminary set of plans. Those were replaced with palm trees, as noted here on this particular landscape plan. Because this is we're trying to incentivize a pedestrian-oriented type environment with people walking. You have very well landscaped Whole Foods market across the street. In other words, we're trying to actually have more pedestrian-oriented canopy-type trees. Again, there are trade-offs because, unfortunately, as the applicant pointed out last time, when you have canopy street trees, your signage takes second place. So, there are trade-offs, so staff had still recommended some sort of tree, possibly that would provide shade, but perhaps not completely shield the signage behind it on the building. The applicant has returned based on that comment, has provided as of today's date, a plan that essentially eliminated the palm trees, but that would be eliminating all of the street trees except for that one jacaranda tree that was mandated by the Public Works Department. So we're hoping to reach some sort of compromise. Perhaps the Design Review Board can discuss that as well. And last but not least, the very last comment made on the November 29th date was to provide a sign program for the building. Sign program has been provided, and it includes what we felt were rather great signage that's integrated within the building, because you have this type of ledge, the aluminum ledge here, that's been utilized to actually provide marquee signs in keeping with sort of like the contemporary modern feel of the building. We just ask that the board pay special attention to the coloring of the signage, because based on the sign program that was submitted, there were colors used that were, I believe, red, blue, and yellow. And that's somewhat not in keeping with the actual overall style of the building, so that the colors be somewhat more subdued or somewhat more metallic to carry over that type of modern contemporary look of the building. With that said, that concludes all of the responses to the actual Design Review Board's comments. Now, staff would also like to go ahead and Stephanie Reich and I have taken a look at the project. We've also met with Cameron between the last project. He had submitted a previous proposal, and we worked with the applicant in order to bring this particular proposal back. In addition to having the overall size of the building reduced, the previous building was 39,000. This one is approximately 37,000, even though that's only a square footage of around 2,000 square feet difference. The mixture of uses within the building has changed. So they've really decreased the number of medical offices, which have a higher parking requirement and also a greater traffic count. They've reduced the medical office configuration. They've increased they've increased the amount of office space, and those would be professional office space, whether it's for insurance, architects, accountants, whatnot. So you have that change within the dynamics of the building. There's also been an increase in the amount of retail and fast food on the ground floor. So the parking that is provided, the 170 parking spaces that are provided in the 3-level subterranean garage, meet the code required parking for all of the uses within the building. So we just want to make sure that the Design Review Board is aware of that.
What was the approximate parking count before?
I have that in my notes, and I will get that to you. I believe it's in the 190 range.
That's what I kind of remember. And
It
so,
was-
so a lot of these changes were parking driven.
It wasn't so much, it was both parking driven. Well, the fact that the applicant had to switch the driveway areas, and then that that obviously impacted the surface parking, it impacted the configuration down below and the 3 levels of subterranean garage. I mean, that all affected the internal, everything. So again, the overall square footage of the building has changed, the configuration of uses has changed, and obviously the parking count has been reflected. There was a proposal in the last scheme of a jasmine yellow. It was a very bright yellow, and staff worked with the applicant to sort of tone that down because that very bright yellow was the one that faced the multifamily residential structures both on the south and on the east. So that's been toned down, and that's more reflective of the colors that would be compatible with the surrounding residential uses. So now it's more of a French vanilla. The architect has also redesigned the massing and facade treatment of the corner element, and it was referred to in the handout as the blue section, quote unquote, to appear lighter, less tacked on, more integrated. As you noticed here, you had this blue screen just on the upper floors, and there was also some comment made on this, the previous corner treatment. Thank you. I appreciate that. That would be helpful. So this was more of a, what was called by Stephanie Reich, more of a tacked-on type of architectural element. The architect has come back, and this particular elevation and corner treatment is more consistent with what was presented in the preliminary set of plans. It's more of this blue element has completely been integrated within the building facade, as opposed to having something that sort of juts out like a screen against the building. So now that this blue section has been completely lowered almost to the ground floor, you have that building wall treatment along the surface parking driveway that's been more integrated within the corner element. And so it definitely has this appearance being of less tacked on, somewhat of a lighter frame. And I'd be more than happy to put up the preliminary elevation drawings as well if you'd like to take a look and see. And last but not least, the window treatment of the center stucco portion of the building has been modified to include wider aluminum bands, which the architect believes will be more consistent and harmonious with the fenestrations of the east and south elevations. As you noticed here, they had the previous submittal, the window wall system for each separate form along Glendale Avenue. It was very similar, and in the current proposal, you see in this particular corner element the change in window sizes and fenestrations, and you still have that aluminum trim that sort of gives a little more shade and play to it. The spacing and the thickness of the mullions vary depending on overall height and proportion of the form. And this differentiation, staff felt, enhances the Glendale Avenue elevation while strengthening the overall architectural ideas of the current proposal. So with that said, the current proposal appears to address the 7 concerns that the board had from your November hearing date. The proposal not only reflects additional modification, and let me backtrack, the cold medication is wearing off. The proposal reflects the additional modifications which result in a design that provides an impressive street presence along Glendale Avenue and an overall stronger, more cohesive architectural solution. So essentially staff supports this particular proposal. The 2 items that we would like to make note that perhaps as conditions of approval, one would be that the sign program should reflect signage fonts and colors that are more compatible with the modern contemporary style of the architecture, and that the currently proposed, or what was previously now eliminated, the California fan palms along Glendale Avenue be substituted with some sort of canopy tree that, again, wouldn't block the signage of the building, but that would still lend to some sort of pedestrian-oriented canopy street continuation along Glendale Avenue. That concludes staff's rather lengthy presentation. Obviously, you had much more detail in your staff report that was included in your packets, and I'm available to answer any questions you may have.
I have 2 questions.
Yes.
We talked a lot about materials.
Yes.
I don't see a material board.
Thank you for mentioning it. I was going to hand that out. Okay. As you noted here, this would show the wall system, the exterior finishes, the stuccos. These were the narrow modular pavers that we were referring to. This is the aluminum cladding, the platinum finish that's on the exterior of the building, as well as the aluminum cladding, but this would be for the blue portions of the building as well.
It's really blue.
It's rather blue. Yes, it is rather blue. And then you have the glazed masonry planters, as you see here, and then you have the street front window system. You're more than welcome to go ahead. Just take a look. And
There was some discussion last time around about the location of the trash area.
yes.
Did that change?
It has. Actually, thank you for bringing that up as well. And that's actually been addressed. Previously, the trash enclosure was in the northeast corner, directly adjacent to the nursery school, essentially. That has been relocated. And integrated within the corner of the building. So you have no trash or any other type of ancillary uses adjacent to the multifamily residential or the nursery school to the rear. So that has been addressed, yes. And there are additional, not only this would be on the ground floor, there are additional trash areas within the within the subterranean garage. Board Member Eliana, did you have a second question? I know that you mentioned two, and I think the materials was on. Okay. Or Chairman Simoni and Board Member Simoni, I think. We can move.
Yeah, please take your seat back.
We're trading right now? I apologize for running late.
No problem. And just note, we do have a very special presentation. There is an animated walkthrough of the building, if you'd like to see that. That has been submitted by the applicant. So after all of your questions, I'd be more than happy to go ahead and...
He's shaking his head saying,
Anything but that.
Did you want to show that, or no?
after the change, we didn't...
Okay. No, it's...
No worries, you did such a great job with the renderings and stuff.
So... But there was one submitted as rather expensive. Any further questions for staff?
Thanks.
All right.
I guess that's one question. Did you want to?
Did you think of it?
Yeah.
I remember.
Oh, come on.
So, do we have any more questions for staff?
No.
Landscape, that's what it was. Landscaping.
Yes, the landscaping.
Landscape plan.
The landscape plan is this particular
There's
one.
no color though.
No, no color. No, and
This is the concrete view.
that would be the concrete pavers with the glass particles. And the modular pavers. And I believe the modular pavers, there is a cut sheet within the material packet.
Mr. Aliana, do you have any more questions for staff? Thank you.
Very good. Our first speaker is Cameron Araji. If you would please state your name for the record, please.
Cameron REI from Envirotexture, 3600 Wilshire Boulevard, Suite 1402, LA 90010. First, I'd like to thank the staff and the urban designer that worked with us so closely. It's been a long journey since the last hearing. We've tried to address all the concerns that the board had last hearing, and we changed the building quite a bit, and overall we are happier with the final product. With that said, I'd like to introduce my partner, John Poindexter, who's going to elaborate all the changes that has happened.
Thank you. The next speaker is John Poindexter.
Good afternoon. Again, John Poindexter with the firm of Envirotexture, 3600 Wilshire Boulevard in Los Angeles. First off, the project has been reviewed by the Design Review Board previously. The staff's presentation is very comprehensive, so I won't attempt to sort of address the rationale of the entire design issues. And staff has gone through a number of areas where the project has changed since the board last saw it. But what I would like to do is to give our rationale for a couple of the issues that staff pointed out relative to the project design. First, the issue of the street trees. As staff pointed out, there are some species of street trees which are in conflict with the desire of the tenant to provide adequately visible signage for the building. At the very inception of this project, in several conversations that we have with the city staff, both in the planning department and transportation department, there was concern expressed by the city providing for a pedestrian environment. One of the most active ways of doing that is providing for a retail environment on the ground floor. And we concur with that. We concur with its goal, and we saw that there was a ready way to do so in the building, as opposed to producing a 3-story medical office or general office building, which was bereft of any ground floor retail. We think that the ground floor retail will add to the building, will add to the vitality of the street. The building design provides location and spaces to support and reinforce that retail, not least importantly with the ability to provide for outside signage between the street and the exterior wall of the building. With that said, we also noted that the pedestrian environment, there's a significant drop-off in pedestrian activity from the west side of Glendale to the east side of Glendale. And we were concerned about that. We thought that it was very important to find a way to reinforce that pedestrian activity, essentially to get people to cross the street and to cross a very heavily trafficked street at that. So we were very concerned about a number of issues, including building and massing. We worked to resolve that. The colors and attraction of the building so that it provided not only the right amenities at the ground floor, but also was eye-catching at both the ground floor and the upper floors. We think we've succeeded. But we know that the success of the retail will be sparked by getting the right tenants in there, and that every tenant that comes to this building will be very concerned about adequate visibility of signage. Now, I have to state that the selection of jacaranda was a selection that was dictated by Public Works. Had Public Works selected instead London Plane or some of the leafier canopy trees, it would have been a little different. But the dictate to have soldier jacarandas in the front of the building concerns us primarily because it would be in direct conflict with the location that we picked out for tenant signage, which is right at the canopy level above the retail. We looked at other locations for tenant signage, including the possibility of having a monument sign or with all of the tenants listed together, and we thought that that wasn't the best solution. And because we don't know at this point specifically which tenants will be signed and will be attracted to this facility, we were very concerned of providing each tenant their own identity. And we are aware that each tenant is going to want to have their own identity and signage, and they're going to want as big and as glitzy a sign as possible. Okay. With that said, I would also like to talk about the rationale behind the signage program. Staff has pointed out that we have provided signage fonts and colors which are not necessarily compatible with the sort of very streamlined and modern look of the building, quite intentionally so. We, want to provide for a wide enough range for tenants who have not yet been selected to bring in their own corporate identity to a signage program. And we are cognizant that they are going to want a sign that is in contrast to the backdrop of the building. So we selected signs for colors which were in contrast, as opposed to in direct compatibility or sort of blended in with the backdrop of the building. So that was our intent, that was our rationale. It wasn't happenstance or lack of talent that it came out that way. We were very cognizant of what the owners' needs and potential future tenants' needs would likely be, and then we did those two things for a number of other, for very specific reasons. And the last point I want to make is that we very consciously tried to break the mass of this building also for some very similar reasons, as opposed to building a long building that was, in our opinion, out of sync with the rhythm of both buildings and lots that have historically occurred in built urban environments. We intentionally tried to break this building into multiple masses, really three distinct masses. We think we've been successful, and we don't think that any of the conditions that were suggested would be incompatible with that, but some of the other issues relative to the variety of tree patterns, the ability to provide distinct separations in masses is in sync with our intent to provide what really looks like a series of buildings which have distinct forms, distinct differences in colors, and differences in terms of tenant, visibility, and pattern as well as materials.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions for Mr. Poindexter, who is the architect of the project?
Thank you.
I have a very quick question. As far as the trees along the street, do you have any recommendations? Do you prefer a specific type?
Well, we haven't investigated, we haven't asked our landscape architect to make a specific recommendation, but we are very concerned that if street trees are imposed, that they be the more leafier canopy types. I threw out London plane because I know that is a very hardy tree and that its canopy is not as dense as some of the other types, but jacaranda or olive or some of the other dense canopies which have a lot of foliage are always a concern when you have signage behind it.
And the second quick question was, as far as the color of the signage is concerned, what color are you proposing at this point in time?
Well, at this point, the sign programs looks at some primary red and yellow colors, red, yellow, and blue. Again, because we suspect that individual tenants will pick one of those because it's compatible with their own corporate identity. Most retail tenants tend to select very bright primary colors for their signage, and we're trying to give them a blend that they can select from.
And are those colors in this signage program that you provided?
It's on the signage program.
Mark, is it the-
Yeah, I didn't see it either.
Is it page 7? Page 10.
Kind of shows them on 10.
Page 7?
No, there's no specific colors.
Yeah, I mean, they're
And if you look on page 5 of the signage program, again, we're trying to anticipate that, different tenants are going to want different signs and different colors, and we are trying to accommodate that in advance.
Yeah, I have a question. This is not the official signage program, is it? This has to be resubmitted, isn't it?
No, this would be the official sign program. But this essentially what you're reviewing today would become the official sign program for the actual development.
But we don't have to approve it
We don't
along
have
with
to,
this
though.
directly, right? Or can it be separated out?
It can be separated
I
out,
think it should be.
but if it's separated out, it would have to come back to you.
Just the signage, right?
But it could
Correct.
be just a sign program, right?
It could be just the sign program.
Okay.
I mean, obviously, I would assume that the applicant would like to go ahead and have everything reviewed tonight or today, but it can be separated out, yes.
Do we have any other questions for Mr. Poindexter? Thank you.
Okay, if there are any other questions later, feel free to ask. Thank you.
Thanks.
Our next speaker is Laura Kobaziski. Sorry. Thank you. If you would restate your name for the record, please.
Laura Kopczynski. I'm at 345 North Cedar. to the east side of the project. I'm the owner-director of the preschool, and am here once again this evening just to express my concerns for the safety and security of the children that I have. I understand, having talked to the architect last time and again this evening, that once the demolition is done, once this is all approved and the demolition begins, the main wall, which secures my playground, is going to be gone. So one of my concerns was what's going to be put up so that my kids will still be safe while they're playing. I went ahead and took 2 pictures just the other day of what is there,
If you would please give it to staff.
so you can see. I also understand that the electrical wiring is going to go subterranean, is going to go underground. As you can see from the pictures, I have asphalt playground, and I have a drain so that when it does rain, my playground isn't flooded. I have a new pump in there, and it pumps the water out to the street. I want to maintain that for future use. But really, my big concern, what I want to express here, is for the safety of the children, not only during demolition, because that'll be a quick in and out, but for then the subsequent weeks and months of construction. My children are outside from 11 to 1 every day, weather permitting. So I just want to make you aware of that. That's all I had to say.
How many children do you have?
24, 3, 4, and 5-year-olds. One of my other concerns was the height of the new wall going in along our properties, so that nobody can jump over and get in. I don't think the little 3-year-olds can get out, but incoming. So that's my concern, and I thank you for your time. And
I have a question. Oh, go ahead. Oh, please. No, I was just wondering, is the wall basically the wall of the building
yes,
that's there? So it's not a fence wall, but it's an actual, it's part of the building?
back of the gas station.
Okay.
yeah.
So that will be removed, and then you're concerned about what will happen, what will they put there in the meantime while they're building? Well, there's a planter there, I don't know if you noticed in the drawing. The planter edge there, so.
But that's
Well, they'll
not
have
going
to
in.
put a temporary
That's
chain
not
link.
going in
Right,
immediately.
so you want to know what's
So
going on.
that's my concern.
Every project, that's a building and safety issue, this is design review, and every project from building and safety needs to be protected for safety issues. So they're going to put, they have to protect their site from any intrusion. So I'm sure they're going to have, first of all, they're probably going to have to, as they dig the hole, this is technical, they're going to have a deep hole, they're going to have piles that are holding up the adjacent soil, they're going to have a wall in place, it's probably about 6-foot temporary construction wall. So that's one of the things that they themselves are going to be concerned, because they're going to be a deep hole adjacent to your site. So I think that their building and safety will be pretty much.
I think they are. I just wanted to come and say hello and express my concerns.
But that's
let you
something
know
that you
that
can
I'm
take
there.
up with them, because but the requirement
And I
was, you
did.
could put a chain link fence on there, but that's not maybe what you want there.
Actually,
So that's something that you guys
And
can
I think,
discuss.
and I think
Yeah.
staff wants to comment on this as well.
Just to assure Ms. Kopczynski and the board members, the zoning code requires a 5.5-foot minimum high masonry block wall for a commercial establishment adjacent to a multifamily residential zone. So you will be seeing a minimum 5.5-foot high masonry wall.
There you go.
What side would that be on? I noticed from the, no, I understand the property line, but if you look at the cut-throughs, like on this one right here, the planter, are we isn't that the back side of the property?
Well, what we could
Or
do is
that's
ask the
the street
architect
side,
to come
right?
up
Okay, so
for
that
rebuttal,
doesn't
and
show
then he
it.
could specifically address those
Okay.
questions.
There may be a
Thank you.
change for that.
Would the applicant or the architect like to have another opportunity to address some of these questions and even perhaps a rebuttal?
That's the back of it right there.
Mr. Poindexter?
Yeah.
So there's no wall showing.
This is incorrect.
Let me first say that she brings up some very
If you would
legitimate
please state
points.
your name for the record.
Again, the name is John Poindexter with Envirotecture at 3600 Wilshire Boulevard. There were some very good points brought up regarding the protection of children, both in a temporary condition and a permanent condition. The building code and public works will require that before we start any excavation process, that we put up a solid barrier, both to protect pedestrians on the street and also adjacent property owners. Now, the wall that she's concerned about is a property line wall, which is on it's joint, it abuts both properties, but it's on the property of the project. So it is our intent, and we have to come up with a phasing and demolition plan that meets the requirements of the building code, to provide a solid wooden temporary barricade, remove the wall, do the excavation, build the deck, build a new wall, and a planter on the inside of that wall before we remove the temporary barricade. So there will be temporary protection, and again, the permanent condition will be a 5.5-foot masonry wall at the property line.
Do you have any more questions for Mr. Poindexter?
5.5 foot, it becomes the planter.
I'm sorry, what?
Permanent wall becomes a planter, right?
Yes, there will be a 5.5 foot and a wall. Well, there'll be a wall behind the planter that goes up to 5.5 feet, and then there'll be a 5-foot planter with a lower masonry wall in front of it.
So I see the wall is higher and the planter is lower.
That's right.
So you plant trees and that you can still see them.
The planting provides an opportunity to put soil on top of the deck, which forms the parking, and an opportunity for planting of trees and hedges to screen the parking lot.
What is that material of that wall?
You can see it on A3.02, the material. On north elevation, you can see the design or the schematic design of it.
That's correct. North interior elevation.
Upper left-hand corner.
A3.02?
Yeah.
On the left side of that north interior elevation, there is the wall, the planter, and then the parking deck.
What sheet are you guys looking at?
I have a quick question for you. The 5.5-foot height, is that on her property side or on your side, and then you've got 2 feet of planter, so you really only got like a 3.5-foot wall, effectively?
Oh, we haven't done the working drawings to specify the height. The intent is that there will be measured from her property side.
Right, because I think just from listening to her concerns, her concern, the kids aren't going to get out. She would like to be as protected from the public getting over the wall.
Right.
So
no, that's intended to be measured from her side of the wall.
Right, which then may not be quite enough. Again, the code is involved here, but if you only got 2.5 or 3-foot wall, any guy can go over the wall.
I don't believe there's a change in grade between the two properties.
Right.
So it would be 5.5 feet.
But it wouldn't be if there's a 2-foot planter on one side.
With the height of the planter.
Right.
Good point.
And I would suggest that you get together with the neighbor on this issue, specifically on the parcel that abuts the nursery, just because there'll be children there, and at the same time you have that planter, and come up with some sort of an amiable solution.
Certainly.
And maybe at that portion, instead of 5.5 feet, at 7.5, whatever the number is, you
Fire
could,
department won't allow that.
whatever the number is, you could work that out.
Certainly, we'll do that, and if there are issues of concern to the planning department, we'll work and work through those as well.
But I think that would be a very smart move to do, especially because there's children right next door, and you're going to have a very deep hole.
Right.
Certainly, we'll also address with her, at the appropriate time, issues relative to phasing and demolition.
Right.
Correct.
Just a quick note on here. Does your wall end here? Because that's what it looks like it's doing. It doesn't go all the way to the end of the property line. The wall, the 5.5-foot portion.
The wall ends, the planter goes to the property line, but the wall itself, behind the planter, stops before it gets to the property line to provide sight visibility for vehicles exiting the driveway.
Okay, that could be a problem then, right?
It would definitely be a problem.
For their enclosure.
Came all the way to the property line.
Right.
Okay.
Do you have any more questions for Mr. Poindexter?
No, because the 5-foot wall, 5.5-foot wall ends here, and then it becomes just a 2-foot planter. And then the children are going to be in here, so
Fence or something. That corner has to be fenced.
it's a leak in the wall.
That's
They
something,
could return the fence. They
that's
could
something I guess we're going to have to discuss.
Yeah, they can
So-
work that out.
So the public portion
Just in this
is
corner.
closed, and now
it's here.
we could discuss this amongst ourselves, and that could be one of the items that we go over is the fence. And then we could maybe even focus on some of the bigger issues and then integrate the fence into it as we have our discussion. So in order to start this off, we had some board members that I believe are seeing this for the first time, and I believe some others that were here last time around. And so, Mr. Yu, do you want to start off our discussion this evening?
Let's see, this is my second time seeing the project. I wasn't privy to the first preliminary one that they had. I do remember the 7 points that we did make, and staff went over it at length about it, and I think there's a good coverage of it. I do commend the architects for actually taking the comments and trying to make a difference in the building, and we can see the changes that were done. I think you have sort of gone through each item and addressed them. The overall look of the building, remains pretty similar to what was presented. I think the colors, now that we see the actual samples, I might have a little trouble with the blue. It's a little too blue for me, but we'll see what the rest of the board says about it. Let's see, I'm not too crazy about the passageway that's created on the middle of the building. I think it still could be a lot more open and come in. And I understand that on the ground level, you're trying to put an enclosure piece in there, and so that almost blocks off the whole entire first floor with the staircase and the roll down. But I think you could take an opportunity to, for example, on this section, you have this huge portion that comes down, and then you have the encasing of the roll down. I think maybe try to explore bringing that up and making these sort of just horizontal pieces that are on there, so that when you're looking at this, you still see a little sky, and then it's blocked off by all of this stuff in here. Trying to make it a lot more transparent in there. See the massing. The backside has improved with the fins that you've put in, or the frame around the windows that you put in. Looks a little more, I guess, medical-ish, whatever the term would be. I do appreciate the reworking of that corner where you have pulled the mass of the building, closer to the actual property line, and creates a little more better views coming out of that area. So I do appreciate that. I think the flipping of the driveway makes a big difference. Let's see. I think we talked about most of the items last time you were here, so those are the only points that I had.
So overall, you're fairly
I'm
comfortable
okay with
the
yeah. There's some tweaking, but overall, I think they've answered most of the questions that we've posed to them.
Good. Mr. Aliano?
Great, thank you. Thank you for responding to our comments. I think you've done a really good job in basically addressing each comment that we gave you the last time. And this is also my second time. I didn't see it the first time, but I'm really quite pleased with the progress the project has made. I think it will be a great addition at this corner. I do want to address a couple of things. Generally, I'm in support of the project, but I do want to make sure we address some things that I think could make a difference. I also have a little bit of trouble with the blue. I think, when I look at this rendering, this image of the project is very appealing. It's very sort of subtle and bold at the same time because of the forms that you have. So I don't know that form really needs that strong blue to make its statement. I think it's already quite nice as it is. I think you could use probably a shade of that blue, maybe a little more subtle, more metallic perhaps, less. It looks almost like a primary blue.
Yeah.
It's called something else, but it's really more a very bold primary color. So I think I would like to encourage you to stay away from the primary colors. I think, especially when you start looking at the signage, and I understand the argument of the color of the signs and the yellows and the whatever you want to use. This image actually is sort of the opposite of what's shown here. This, to me, is very playful. This one here is a bit more serious but more elegant. And I think that corner needs that. I think it needs more of an elegant solution rather than something that's extremely playful, because then, to me, I think it falls apart when there's so much stuff going on. It has a sort of amusement park feeling, and I don't know that this corner wants to do that. I think there's already enough going on at that corner with the grocery, the Whole Foods across the way, there's a vitamin shop across the kitty corner from you. There's a lot of activity already, and throwing more of this stuff on that, I don't think it would work very well at that corner. So I would like to encourage more subtle colors. Again, this, to me, if you were to use the color palette on this image, I think that would be quite attractive, except for the red curbs. And I know why you did that. It makes the drawing look good. All right, so I wanted to kind of comment on that. The other is, I have a little list here. Not a very long list, just a little one. I like what you've done with the rhythm. I think this rhythm of the column is a lot better than what you had in the second scheme, the one that we saw the last time, where get my pen here. These were much tighter. They were much closer, these two columns, and then you couldn't really understand what was going on. Now this actually curves, so in a sense you could actually change the language here, but I'm not going to really ask you to do that. I think we've gone there already. I think at this point I'm more concerned about, and I didn't notice this the last time when I was reading the notes, these are the glazed masonry units, right? And I just don't know how they seem so isolated, like these very thin masonry units. To me, masonry implies mass and not necessarily thin elements. And so when you start doing it with these very thin elements, I don't know if it's going to be very convincing that these guys are actually sort of, the structure of the building. So I wonder whether these could actually be a clad material, a different kind of, have a Lucabon for most of the panels, but you could use a different, some kind of a cladding material that contrasts the others. I've seen the glazed units are quite attractive, but they're units, and they look like units. It doesn't look like a continuous surface because you have joints. So it looks like modules, little units of masonry. So I'm a little concerned about that, and I'd like to hear what they have to say about that. I think when you use it on the sides here, I'm assuming you have it here as well, or is that okay? I mean, this is really, it begins to really do what it's supposed to do. The planters as well here. But the glazed material is actually, what should I say? Well, it's glazed, therefore it has a little bit of sheen to it. So it doesn't have this sort of nice stone feel, which you would get when you start. Even though this is concrete, I think the pavers you picked for the walkway is quite nice. This material and the glaze with that, I think they're not. I don't think they really talk to each other very well. I think they're two different things. So I don't know if this could be something else. I'm not really trying to convince you not to do that. I'm just trying to sort of run it through my head and get a discussion going to see what's going on. I'm just, I noticed that today. I didn't notice this the last time. So, that and these guys and that, they're very fragmented. I mean, you have a piece here, a piece there, and that little piece there. If this red is a base of the material, then it will be probably more convincing. Now, I'm assuming that the vista wall that you have here, like you show in the book that you gave us, the joints are butt glazed, right? And the horizontals are capped. So let's talk about the horizontals a little bit. What are these members here? Are these members actual projections, or are they very thick mullions? I think you might have to come up on that.
They're thick mullions that will project out about 6 inches.
And if you would state your name for the record.
Cameron Ariad from Envirotecture.
So they are like, they're all made out of some kind of a brake metal, clad in brake metal or something to match the window. Right. And what is the color of these elements? I can't tell from...
That's aluminum,
Metallic, is it? Have a metallic look, and they're very clean. And what about the bottom? Is the bottom also does it wrap in metal? Are there lights in there, or are they're just little pieces that come up? Okay. So there really aren't. There are some horizontal members here, but are those also those are butt joints?
Right.
Really, I don't know that. I don't think the code will allow you to do that, because you got to capture the glass on two ends. So this might end up being a horizontal cap mullion, and then you will have your verticals.
The butt joints are only, our vertical joints are butt joints, but the horizontals, they're being supported by the mullions.
So this horizontal thin line here is not really a joint, it's a cap.
Is a cap, right.
Okay. All right, that makes more sense. I mean, I can see it more practical. So any horizontal line that we see here will have a cap, and then the verticals will be. So the idea of these lines that come across the building is emphasized by the mullions and by these overhangs.
Correct.
All right.
So the answer was they're asking
The cap.
stakeouts.
Is this the horizontal?
These
that
six
you're
out,
talking about in here?
but these are actually standard basically mullions. They're caps.
Because, yeah, those aren't projecting at all.
Yeah, those are the ones that are horizontal, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But it has a little cap to them.
But they're square.
How much are they?
Yeah. Now, those are about maybe an inch and a half,
Okay.
the most.
Because they're pretty exaggerated here, though.
I know.
They're more defined.
Yeah. Yeah, I know, that doesn't be nice.
Okay. So the glazier, the color, we talked about that. The landscaping, I had a comment about that. I understand the concern
I actually want to see that.
about the signage, but I don't know how much weight the public works will have in this, because it's public way, right? I mean, that's not part of your property, so they're going to have a saying in it. If they're saying jacarandas and you can convince them to use something else, that would be great. I don't know that jacaranda is really the best tree for this anyways, I think. But the London plane, those are quite nice. They're basically like miniature, what do you call them? What's the name of the species? It's a local species, but not the London plane. Sycamore. They're like little baby sycamores, right? Yeah. They're right. And those are quite nice. They're attractive. They have a good green, nice, strong green color. So I would say if you're happy with those, and you can get those with a canopy that actually is high, that, you know, when people are driving, you're sitting, you're not really at 5 feet or low, so you're looking up below the canopy, then you can see the signage. Shouldn't be a problem. And maybe you can solve that also by you don't have to put so many. You can just put, the way you space them, you could have gaps in between them. Because I think because you're facing west, without trees there's going to be a lot of glare. I mean, the paving and the glass, it's just not going to feel good. Especially if you have people sitting at the other end. You want to sort of build up to that shaded area. So I agree with staff. I think something needs to be done with the trees. The palm trees are nice, but really they're mainly decorative. They don't really do much in terms of, plus I think it might actually contradict what you're trying to do, because you're more about horizontality and these guys are more about verticality. So I support the canopy trees if they're high enough to not hide the signage. Talked about that. Now, the other thing that I wanted to talk about, and I looked through the material board, and again, the only really concern I have is in terms of color is the blue. I don't mind the terracotta look of the glazed unit. I would like to get more discussion on that. What would have been really great, and I won't hold this against the project, but I think it would be good to do, at least for our staff and Ms. Wright to look at, to sort of confirm, is that I think on a project of this scale and this caliber project, I think it would have been beneficial for you and also for us to have even a half-inch, and normally we don't get these, but I think this drawing, because there's so much, where we are, you know, the way the elevations are done, they're very hard to understand three-dimensionally, because everything's flat, right? I mean, you have to, even in the rendering, you can't see it because it's so small and there's so much going on. I think it would have been beneficial if you had done a half-inch wall section of this building, a half-inch wall section of that, half-inch wall section of that, and that. And then, next to the wall section, you put a half-inch partial elevation of the whole system, so you can see the profiles, so that we know what these profiles are going to be like. Because right now, you say 6 inches, but it's very hard to really, it'd be nice to have a drawing that shows it, and it will help you during construction, and will help the city during construction when they actually go ahead and inspect it to make sure that it gets, because if this building is not executed correctly, the way you've designed it, the profiles are not done correctly, it's going to look very flat, and it's not going to look as good as you intended to look. So, as part of my support, I will require that sections and partial elevations be submitted to our urban designer, Ms. Wright, and the team, for them to review to make sure that it's consistent with the design intent. I'm not asking you to come back, I'm just asking you to provide those documentation. Does that make sense? So right now, that's all I have. Sorry? You're checking to see if it is?
Mr. Foy wants to make a comment.
Yeah, but if they're not large enough, I mean, I'm not talking about building section, I'm talking about...
Yeah, it's not
No,
enough.
like to see the profile.
no, that makes sense, and I understand, what I'm understanding from the comment is that because these details for this project are so crucial to the execution of the project, we should have a record of them prior to the construction document phase. But to clarify, that's typically a level of detail that we would not ask for at this stage. Often, when there are crucial details, we are asking for them because we know you want to see them. But that is a lot of information to ask for, where we're asking this to essentially be a schematic design level proposal. So, just an FYI.
Well, but how do we know? Because we've asked, even in small residential, we've asked people to sort of come in and give us jam and head and sill details of the windows so we could see the profiles.
Typically, we are asking for that level of detail for the windows, railings, and doors, and wherever we know that the details are appropriate. So we would definitely appreciate that feedback from the board, and in the future, we'll continue to ask for those crucial details.
So for this project, you don't think that then?
No, for this project, we absolutely will. I just wanted to mention that in the future, we will likely not be asking as a matter of course for a half-inch wall section unless there's a crucial detail involved.
Normally don't see
Right.
those things, but I think this project needs it.
Yeah, I would
And
agree
again,
with
there's
that.
supposed to be profiles. We don't need to know what's inside. Although you're going to do those drawings anyways because, so you might as well, but, okay.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think Mr. Foy has some commentary as well.
Mr. Foy?
Yeah, if I may, I would just ask the board to consider on the matter of street trees. I believe the reason the Public Works Department asked for jacaranda is because we do have kind of a continuous pattern of jacaranda on Glendale Boulevard, and I just want you to keep that in mind as you make your decision.
I was going to add and echo, actually, Mr. Foy's comment, because, obviously, both on the east and west and that particular block base, there are jacarandas. I'd be more than happy to have staff work with the Public Works Department to find if there is another species or, with what tree palette is available for Glendale Avenue in that particular
Could they
area.
alternate?
And again, I'd be more than happy to double check with you and get back to you if that's a condition of approval.
And I understand their concern because on Brand, it does the same thing. It's just,
Exactly.
you can see one sign, you don't see another. It's just kind of, but we understand what you're saying.
Certainly nice to walk on Brandon, it's not so nice to walk on the
That is
blank
true.
section of Glendale Avenue.
Have you concluded, Mr. Aliano?
No.
For now,
Thank you.
he reserves the right.
Sure. Well, with the case of the trees, and I'm bouncing all over if I talk about trees, I'm of the belief that this building should not be hidden by trees. Retail, let me finish. If there's Public Works has a tree that they want specified, and it works in conflict to this architecture, I think that perhaps what they've shown here, in my opinion, is just stop the tree where they've stopped it. Let the jacaranda be that one that they've indicated, and let the retail architecture go all the way through.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, sorry.
Yes.
I don't think intermixing different trees is going to be successful. It'll look out of consistency when you look down that street. There's no reason, in my opinion, to just stop the tree. The glass is high performance. The retails has that horizontal band. We can see shadows of it in this rendering. The architecture is working well, and I don't, in my opinion, if they wanted to stop their city trees exactly where they're stopping, I think it's going to be fine. But they'll solve it, I'm sure, as it goes further. It's been a long time since I've heard architects describe their project and as elegant as you two gentlemen have. You have a good handle on the project. I also think that you saw that the first submittals, as we see here, needed improving. And working with our professional staff, we have, I think, the result of a building that's come a long way. And your positive approach to this building is a very important building, too. It should be commended. You described it well. You gave your inspiration as to why you decided that way. And I think that rarely do we hear stuff of that up here. So on that, I want to commend you. I also want to say that often we should be careful with restricting architectural freedom of the individuality of the building. If we start tweaking it too much, in my opinion, then we start losing the original common theme that inspired this architectural team. If we think that the blue is a little too bright, in my opinion, well, okay, but maybe it isn't. Maybe it isn't. Maybe we should explore things that give more architectural freedom. I don't want to handcuff this team too much. Look how far they've come. So I just wanted to get that out, too. I think that they did to integrate a 37,000 square foot building on this corner with subterranean parking, which is super expensive, with 3 different tenants at least, medical, office, and retail, plus retail restaurant. They've done a terrific job. I think this is an example of how we want to energize street corners with businesses, not just from 10 to 7, but businesses from coffee in the morning maybe, and breakfast, and office people. And it's unusual when you see 3 or 4 different tenants in one building. And again, I think that should be commended of their success. This building is 37,000 square feet, and when you look at it, its front elevation, in my opinion, breaks up nicely, and especially as you turn the corner, lesser designs would have just taken that as a right angle and just come 18 feet or whatever the setback is from the corners on that angle. But this team turned the corner. That corner to me is playful, and the blue is playful. A project that I liked the structural steel when it was going up, and then when they put the cladding on, I thought that they fell short. I hate to tell them, but the Borders books on Glendale Avenue. When I was looking at that structural frame, I was thinking they could do something really exciting there. And when I see what the exterior skin looks like, to me, it's a disappointment. I think this building, be playful, but let's let them free up a little bit of that stuff. That's my opinion. As I often am told, I have a lot of them. Time is money. Commercial buildings have a short window to get built, and I think these guys, in my opinion, need to get moving quickly. Our economy is not doing great. They want to find some really good quality tenants, not some third-rate tenants that'll be gone every 3 years, and then we have a corner that's under blight. I think they want to find top drawer tenants, and they can do that. They got a Victoria's Secrets in there. I did one once, and they pay their bills just fine. I like the way that this street corner is going. Allen's building, which is the Vitamin building, is a contemporary building. The Whole Foods is a contemporary approach of a classic, colonial type architecture. This building, I think, is going to speak well to Allen's building. This corner could be a little architect's corner. It's a good corner, especially with that gas station that used to be there. So I think that they need to keep pushing playfulness. I like the choice of materials. I looked at the materials and how they're placing them in. I liked the glazed block. It's lighter. Unreflective glass is a heavy material. This building is light. Look at all the glazing. It's a light building. It wants to sparkle. I like that. I like the way that the concrete in that public area is going to sparkle. That's a good choice. I don't want to weigh this building down. The plaster is not a heavy textured plaster. It's a steel troweled plaster. That's a light approach.
I like that. I like, you guys must be doing retail a long time. I used to be with MCG Architecture, big retail company. And one of the things we were always fighting with in cities is let the sign program be more specific to the high-quality tenant. I think poor retail centers are when all the signage looks the same. It doesn't have the pop. Good retail centers have individuality of their individual tenants. So I think we should be careful with restricting too much of the sign program. And I'll wrap up. Their parking, they got 172 parking stalls in this site. They're going down 4.5 stories. That's a 3 stories, whatever it is. It's a lot, and they put them all in there. They should be successful. How many people do we see? They have 170 some odd parking in there. And it flows well. It's not a big, that's hard. Parking is hard. I agree with the entrance where the stairs are. If you notice here, the section in here is a little bland. It's a little heavy. This, I think, could improve. And I think you guys see it too. It can improve. The stairs, if you notice, it comes at you straight at it. But you have a radius building coming this way. The radius building, hold on, sorry. The radius paving comes this way. Maybe something can be done with that entrance, something at that entrance. That's the only one that I agree has a little more exercise that could be applied. I like the way they broke up the building, but at the same time, it's one architecture. The back, I think, is very nice. It's a quiet back to the adjacent preschool. I think that's a good back, and the side is a good back. The landscaping on site, I think with those planters, you guys are really going to put this glazed tile on the above deck planters. You don't have to do that, but you're doing it because it's good. This, I think, is good. Here's your wall here, and then right in front, the same nice glazing is right there. This building has been designed, I think, from all sides. Anyway, I rarely get excited because on good building, because sometimes we see such work that's so challenging. But I think that they've done a great job on this corner, and especially what's going on with the other side. So, anyway.
Thank you, Mr. Insua, and Mr. Ellis.
This is the first time that I've seen the project, and so I defer a little bit to my colleagues who have been here and have watched it changed. It is nice to have an architect who listen to the board and try to work those things in. I would support staff. I mean, I think the trees are very important, and I defer a little bit. I understand the sign code, and the merchants want people to be able to find them, but it's the same problem on Brand, and people seem to find them. I think if you now look down at the Americana, they put a lot of giant trees into that, yet you can still see, it's a pedestrian-friendly thing. If you want to drive that thing, you got to block the sun. And I think certainly the jacarandas, I got one in my front yard, and for most of the year, it doesn't have much foliage on it anyway. But, it's that summertime when it gets green. Of course, when it starts dropping all of those purple flowers, not my problem. It's funny that you talked about the parking, because one thing that drives me crazy, I'm a user, I'm not a designer. I go in parking garages, and you got to drive past every single parking space when you're at the bottom. You got to get down to them. You got to drive back up front. Obviously, because of the demands for what you're looking to do it, you're kind of fixed by the city. It always just strikes me as, isn't there some way to design parking lots where it's a little more convenient to get in and get out? And I guess, I'm not tooting Caruso's horn, but if you've been to the Grove, they figured it out. Of course, it's a gigantic building, but, you don't have to drive past every parking space. You don't have to wait for somebody to back out. You can find it. Now, my other question is, it seems that the only in point for the parking is off of Lexington. Is that correct? That the driveway off of, and again, I'm the last guy looking at it, so I don't want to tinker, but it seems to me that means that when you come out, the traffic flowing out onto Glendale Avenue is going to be running into the people who are trying to make the right turn onto Lexington. Your traffic flow. Was it ever considered having traffic be able to come in off of Glendale Avenue and exit onto Lexington?
Yes, this has been going over back and forth, and also with Tom Mitchell from our Traffic and Transportation Administration. So yeah,
I mean, again, I support the project, but boy, it's going to be it's just a little crazy. And knowing, again, I'm a user. If it's hard to get in and get out of, I don't get in and get out of very often. I go someplace else. And so, lastly, I do tend to agree with you. It's a well-designed building. The blue, it's funny, I guess color is very subjective, because I looked at the blue and I said, wow, that's a great blue. I mean, it's a color that appeals to me. Whether it'll look great, 2 stories worth of a building, I can't tell you, but I didn't certainly have a problem with the color. I think those are my last concern, of course, would be you do have an issue, you understand it with the neighbor and figure out how to make that work. Obviously, it seems to me you're going to have to be on their property at some point for some kind of temporary fencing to make, so please work that out.
Thank you, Mr. Ellis.
Thank you.
Well, I must say, I'm very much impressed with this design package and where it's gone from the last time you presented. I think there's been a lot of positive solutions and a lot of positive attributes have been added to it. And this is a board, and so we have a lot of different opinions. But what I did see and what I did notice is that Mr. Aliano last time around had suggested some very specific redesign of that corner. And I, from what I'm hearing, is you didn't really focus on it too much this time, and I believe it's because there's been somewhat of an improvement. And in fact, I believe it works a lot better with that corner. In fact, it's not as massive. It seems to be more integrated with the building. And I believe what is really unique about this project is this ABC design language. And you've even gone so far as integrating different colors, integrating different materials, and that to me is very positive. And I think we need more buildings that really go into that level of detail, and so that's important. I also think that the horizontal bands that you've integrated as well do a great job of tying the whole thing together. And so this A, B, C, different portions of it, as we might call it, end up being just tied in and sewn in together, and that to me was very positive. The new round portion, as I pointed out earlier, I believe is drastically better than the old. The old was very massive, and when I look at the new color elevation on the right side, it's not as top-heavy. One doesn't directly get focused on this massive eyebrow, as I would call it, and is a very positive solution for that corner and creates a very nice feature above the seating area, in my opinion. So that I think was very positive as well. You've relocated the driveway, and I do appreciate that, and I think that is a wise move. It basically furthers the traffic from that corner, and you gave up some parking in doing that, and also the trash was relocated as well, and that is positive. I'm going over these because you took the efforts to do it, and I think it should be acknowledged as well. So I believe that was a positive change. The paving material that you've specified is very appealing. In fact, I think it's quite contemporary, and it ties in with the building as well. So that, I believe, is a good choice. And I believe there's some sort of compromise that needs to take place with the street trees. It's an issue that has come up, and I think by working with Public Works, you're going to be able to iron that out. And I would really encourage you, as not only working with the neighbor on the wall issue, to work very closely with Public Works, so you do not end up with a very heavy green. You want to end up with something that's going to certainly allow you to keep tenants in this building and to allow you to have a successful building going forward. And so therefore this could be an analog for future commercial properties to really focus on a level of design and a level of detail that isn't really economically, let's say, viable unless tenants really want to be there. So I believe you should work with Public Works and come up with some sort of a compromise. One of the biggest issues I had last time was the entrance, and I still think that's an issue. I think that is, if I had to really focus on anything as a minor, very minor redesign, would be that entrance area. And I think it's something you should consider on your own. I'm certainly in support of the project, but I think if you have a lighter sort of an entrance with more of a visible vista, call it, a view corridor through will really lighten up the building and will just be much more of an exciting facade to look at. So I would really encourage you to try to create that somehow by looking at it. And as perhaps you've done so much work on everything else, that might have been overlooked, and it's now, before you go into plan check, you could perhaps take a look at that. The eastern facade, I still think is somewhat bare, but I think you are going to focus on it, and I would imagine you're going to focus on it because of everything else that I'm seeing. It's probably something that will get worked out as well. And I think the fence issue has come up. I think the neighbor certainly has a good point about it. This is something that I would certainly communicate with her, as I indicated earlier, and so to put some of her inhibitions to rest and to try to help her out. And she is running a business, and they just happen to be children, so it's something that I think is worthwhile. So that and the public works with the trees are two items I think you should reconsider and work with. Mr. Aliano's request about the half-inch elevation details, I think is reasonable, because what we like here is the aesthetics. I think we are drawn to this design, and Mr. Aliano pointed to it, and Mr. Encillo pointed to it. We like it, and this is what we want built. I mean, this is, if you built this, we're going to be happy, and I think it would be a good way for you to explore that as well. And then there's some sort of a history that's part of the record of this is what was proposed and this is what was collaborated on, and everyone liked it. So going forward, I don't think that's a bad idea. And I'll just conclude with that perhaps you should even consider some solar panels on the roof of this building. It's very contemporary, it's very modern, it's very today, and that's really the wave of the future is sustainability, so might not be a bad option for you to consider. So all in all, job well done, and I appreciate your efforts. Is there some items we want to discuss, or do we want to perhaps entertain a motion?
What about the sign code? What do we want to do with that? Do we want to do the sign plan?
Well, Mr. Aliano had some thoughts on that, so do you want to elaborate on that, Mr. Aliano?
Well, see, the sign programs that we get usually are much more detailed than that. They show the details how a sign gets attached, and so even though it identifies all the different signs, I've seen more comprehensive sign programs being proposed. I'm not saying this is a bad one. I'm just saying that it has more. I think in a way, this sort of leaves it open-ended, because the sizes are depicted, the ID signs are shown, and so are the tenant signs. So I think that, I don't know, I mean, we have a discussion about it.
Is that something you would feel maybe comfortable with them working with staff, or do you want to maybe, would you be comfortable with approving the project if that's what we decide to do, and then having the signage be something we consider in the future?
Well, the thing is, the sign, they have to come back, and they have to get a sign. I don't know, I'm assuming this is done by a sign consultant. I don't want to put a monkey wrench into the whole thing, but
it is up to the board to determine. You can either go ahead and approve the sign program now, approve it with conditions, so whether it's limiting the colors, the fonts, etc. You can direct staff to work with the applicant if you so feel comfortable, or else you can just request that the sign program come back as a separate design review board submittal.
I would suggest that if staff has direction from you on the kinds of things you'd like to see, if you'd like to see, for instance, a consistent letter type or one of the letter types that they've proposed, if you'd like to allow national logo chains, etc. So if you could give us some direction, then we would have the ability to approve the sign program.
One of the things that we used to do when I used to do retail is one of the things we would have first time anyone's told me to speak up, we would have base building sign that would
be approved, if you will, because it is the identifying architecture of the sign, and I think you've done that from the parking and the tenant and the ones. And then we made a condition on the project that I used to have to get approval for, is that they would allow national identified sign logo programs as long as they meet the size requirements which we have here. They have 80% of the frontage, no more than 2 feet high, because that gives the opportunity for the, or whatever it is, I saw it a second ago, and that's the way that they often encourage national tenants, national retailers. Base building needs to be this way with this font, this size, this lighting, and then national, only national would be allowed to follow that criteria.
That's something that staff has seen time and again for the sign programs as well, so.
What happens with a local?
The logo would be part of the sign. So, for instance,
Go ahead.
to use Starbucks as an example, but you'd have Starbucks and then their central logo, and that would be the national brand sign. So as long as it meets the dimensions and the locations of the sign program, we would be able to approve that. This would be just solely for the signs that are not national logos. That would be the mom and pop type of establishments, and whether or not you choose to go the playful route, which I hear Board Member Insua and Board Member Ellis supporting, or to be more of a subdued, refined type of route that I heard Board Member Eliano supporting. So it's up to the board. And again, we've had sign programs that, when you not limit, I don't want to say limit, but you allow for, certain color schemes or certain type of letter fonts. And then the applicant has the ability to go ahead and play around within that particular scheme that's been approved.
And this is only because if you go with a national plan, you're only really affecting the one-off shots.
Correct, that's
Right.
all.
Right.
Yes, because essentially the national logos or any type of national chain foods, whatnot,
Yeah, I mean, I'd
would
hate
be.
to tell them you can't have blue or green when you're letting Starbucks have the green.
Correct.
You know that type of being
Correct.
kind of.
Yeah, the colors and national, logos, font, styles,
Right.
and colors would all be included.
But this has colors? I don't see colors.
The one thing, I noticed also the photograph, actually on page 9, 10, and 11, you have those primary reds, blues, and whites that are used. When you go into the greater detail, it lists the type of construction, whether it's illuminated halolit channel letters, how to, the actual, it doesn't specify the colors themselves. It specifies the finishes and whatnot, and that's typical of. And again, as I mentioned in the staff report, this was submitted the afternoon that the staff report had to be distributed to you. So staff did a cursory review of this. Said there might be issues regarding that parking signage in the rear, and that the sign program would be reviewed by you to determine compatibility with the architecture of the building. But again, staff did not have enough time to really go into all the nuances, and that is something, if you prefer, to give staff direction regarding colors and fonts and logos, or if you'd like to come back, but.
Well, what I suggest we do is perhaps entertain a motion, and part of that motion would be the signage program. I think, in my humble opinion, we should really focus on the building primarily, and then the signage should be a secondary part of our discussion today, very important secondary part of our discussion today, I should underline, and that should be also perhaps itemized in the motion as well. So with that, what I'm hearing are some positive thoughts on this project. So do we want to perhaps take a look at a motion, and then in that case we could further discuss how we want to deal with the signage?
And just to reiterate, what I heard the board's comments would be, one is to provide a half-inch wall section. These would be the details to the particular elevation of the wall system for review by staff prior to submittal for plan check. Second item was to continue to refine the ground floor transparency, the view corridor of that break and wedge on the ground floor. Third would be to work with the Public Works Department and with planning staff regarding the street tree issues to come to some sort of solution that everyone can agree upon. The fourth would be to coordinate with the rear nursery school neighbor regarding demolition, construction, phasing, and fencing. Would the board like to?
That's not design review, though. That's building and safety and requirements for construction project.
Correct.
And I don't think we have that.
This is just to coordinate
Okay.
with, the applicant would coordinate with the rear property owner regarding demolition and phasing and whatnot. So not to supersede any type of requirements by building code or OSHA or, planning. It's just that there would be some sort of coordination between the new two neighbors. And if you'd like, I can also include Board Member Aliano's comment regarding the solar panels.
No, it wasn't me.
Forgive me, Chairman Simonian, I apologize. The cold. But with that, that it would be a consideration. But that's
There were some additional comments that we heard consistently, although I'm not sure there was agreement on those, so if we can maybe go through them one by one, that the blue color should be more like the drawing, and perhaps revised to be a little bit more subdued. There wasn't unanimous agreement on that. We also heard a comment regarding the material on the pilasters, a concern that the use of stone on the pilasters may be less appropriate than an alucobond or another type of material. We also heard that additional consideration could be given to providing more interest on the eastern facade, and the consideration of the use of solar panels, and as Vilja mentioned, lighter entrance and more transparent. We did take away that there's a lot of confidence in this architectural team, which we share. However, if there's something in the approval now that's different than what you would like to see, we'd like to get that guidance so that staff can then work with the applicant, who obviously has the skill to do their best design.
The pilasters aren't stone, they're like a glazed unit, so there's a completely different, not a natural stone, which could come across as being heavy. We see example of it. It's a glazed, shimmery sort of material with a glaze on it. So I want to make that as a correction. It's not stone. Okay. Well,
and I didn't include those because I did not hear consensus amongst the board members regarding those.
should we also include a signage program as something that we bring up as the initial discussion and then for vote, because that's the way it was submitted, and if that falls, then we can then cut that out of it?
You could. I mean, typically we would have reviewed it a little bit more closely, and we've been reviewing it as...
Let me give it a shot. With respect to the signage program, I'm comfortable with the size of the signage percentages, which I'm sure is a zoning and code issue. I'm comfortable with the size of the signage, 80% of the front ditch, I think 2 feet high. I'm comfortable with the manufacturing of the signage, and that's very contemporary and very positive. I also want to say that the base building signage, we can identify that, if we're comfortable with that, the base building signage, both the parking, the letters for the address and the Glendale Gardens, I'm comfortable with that. And then the one we should do is to mandate that if a national tenant is introduced for signage, as long as they conform with the requirements of size and manufacturing, national tenants are allowed to bring in their own colors and their own graphics. Go ahead.
Just as a question, this particular signage program is unique in that it's identified 3 different types of letters. Is that something that the board is okay with, having that level of flexibility, or would you prefer some consistency, which is what we typically see?
And we would need to actually see, unless the board so chooses, if you are willing to entertain all colors and all fonts, because at this point in time, this sign program does not indicate a color palette or a font style.
For national tenants. And right now, it doesn't identify.
Excluding
right.
national tenants.
Right, excluding national tenants, yes,
national
I think we
tenants.
should be able to limit it
So,
to, they've got 3 different channel type lighting. I think we should say one type if it's not a national tenant, and limit it to a particular lettering style, or a few, maybe a variety. So that you don't have mom and pop shops having different names that are not nationally identified and having their own sort of thing. I think that would be too much.
How do we document? Because this only shows that. So if we say, there's no real font being, unless I'm wrong, right? It doesn't really talk about the font.
Was staff's concern over the 3 different types for the project, not the retail? Because there was 3 types of fonts shown for the parking and for the building, and then for the tenants.
this would essentially be, well, and again, this would, I believe what Board Member Insa was saying, the base for all of the retail tenants on the ground floor.
Right.
So not so much as, it's up to the board. If you feel that the Glendale Center font is appropriate for the building ID up there on the 3rd floor, the way it is, that the parking, the more of the aerial style, very angular, whereas the garden center is somewhat circular in terms of fonts, and the parking is very angular. If the board approves it, that's fine. But we just also need to know that for the retail signage, because this is a sign program, you also need to establish what the baseline type of signage will be, and is there a gradation of types of fonts and color schemes that you'd like to see other than the approved, permitted national chain font.
Yeah, and in addition, I was actually specifically referring to page 7, where it outlines face-lit channels, halo-lit channels, dual-lit channels. Typically, there's one construction type of signage for a level of consistency. And staff would recommend that in this case.
When I saw this part of the package, I saw it as more of a conceptual signage package to give us an idea of what the signs might look like on the building, because they show them on the design of the building. Because it's nice to have. A lot of times we get commercial buildings that just have a note that says sign location, and you don't get to see what the sign looks like in scale to the building, and this does that. You can see the scale. Because this, if you notice, really addresses the scale of things and the size. It's not addressing the font. It's not addressing the colors. So there's missing information. I think it would be more prudent to say that this is acceptable with this package as a concept. But I think they need to have their signage consultant come in and just basically give us a more comprehensive package, and it's not that big a deal, because they're still getting the project through. Usually signage doesn't come to us until after the project is approved and almost built. So I think they have plenty of time to do this the way the city normally does it, and the way that we can all feel comfortable. And it basically says you're okay. Conceptually, this is quite acceptable. I don't have any issues. But I think that way they can keep going with the project, get into plan check, and we're not slowing them down.
I agree with Mr. Aliano. I think we've been discussing this project for 2 hours, and time flies when you're having fun, I guess. And so what I would suggest we do is entertain a motion for the building, and I absolutely agree in that this is more of a conceptual package from what I'm seeing as far as the signage program is concerned, and it's something perhaps they could come back, and it could be a very quick item that we discuss at a later point in time. It could have, you could perhaps come back with some specifics as to the size, what you want to do with the nationals, what you want to do with the local tenants, colors, and so forth. And I'm sure you're going to do a great job with putting that together. And so I would certainly support a project supporting this design this evening with that just being one of the conditions that they come back. So does somebody want to entertain a motion for the building?
I think there were a few other comments that Ms. Wright mentioned.
Exactly.
And I don't really, as far as the CMU glaze, I just was trying to strike a conversation. I'm not really pushing, one way. I have my opinion, but it's just my opinion, and I'm not going to sort of impose it. If the rest of the board doesn't feel strongly about it, it's okay. But I think there was one item, the color, there were a few of us that had a concern, and I don't know how to deal with that. Because this is something that you work with
Right.
planning department and say, come up with other blues. I don't know. This blue might work great. I can't, it's kind of hard to visualize, especially when your renderings don't show the blue. If the renderings show that dark blue, then you can see it.
Cameron, are you?
We'd have to open the meeting
Can I
up.
hand you this? This is.
Well, we have the blue right here.
Sure, we'll open up the public portion of the
Those are
hearing
palette,
again.
That's the palette.
You would state your name again, very quickly for the record.
Cameron REI from Envirotecture. These are the palettes of the colors that the manufacturer has, and if you go through them, that blue is the best match that we found with the platinum. I feel
Blue, are you proposing?
That's this one, right?
And for a medical office, color blue is used quite often, and it's used successfully. And the amount of blue that we have is very little. It's all around the glass. So it's not really that much surface that.
Well, this is the old rendering, but
That's the old one.
again, it's the old is.
Yeah. Just a band around the.
Right.
Thank you.
So what's the cut?
Close the public portion of the hearing again.
That's my favorite blue.
Well, how should we deal? We should put closure to this. How should we deal with this?
Well, there's some strong beliefs, I guess, from the board about the dark color, about the architecture being so successful, and that we don't want to restrict creativity and really the architect on this matter. What I suggest we do is, as I've repeated a few times, is someone make a motion, and then we'll very quickly come to the conclusion whether this board could support
Okay, I have a
motion.
Do I have a motion made by a board member? Is it with the blue or?
Well, let me just do it.
I guess I'd like to,
Can I add something to that?
Sure, yeah.
Because maybe this, here's where I'm going with this. There's a lot of projects that go up, and we approve colors, and then when they get built, we go, oh, wow, I never expected that. And then it's too late. And I wonder if it's something we could do here that, I don't think a board has ever done it, but is that because the color is so important and we don't want to restrict, this blue may be the right blue, you don't know. Is it possible to put in your contract, when you go out to bid, that your contractor is supposed to do a mock-up, basically, of this panel for the city to review?
and if they don't approve it, then where are they?
No, you do two, you have to do two options at least. You have to do two mock-ups, say maybe a blue like this and some other color, and then you sort of decide.
You would have to choose.
No, I think that's a dangerous road to go down.
And for me, is it a horrible blue? Is it something that people are going to have a heart? Excuse me, I think I'm getting bilious sickness. Is it something that people are going to have a heart attack over and think, what were they thinking? No, look at the building. Right. It's fun, it's light, it's airy. We're going to delay they're going to be on pins and needles for 15 months to do a mock-up so that people can then put their hands together and say, I don't like it, I do like it. At that point, they're going to be rocking and rolling, they're going to be moving through. We see the materials, we see it applied on a building that wants to be playful and interesting and light and airy. Let's try something, and if we didn't, then we'll always remember that's the blue building. Let's look at the blue whale at Pacific Design Center. It's fun, it helps. The world's full of beige too much, and they do. I think they did a nice job with this blue. It'll be the signature part of this building on the radius corner. What are we going to do? Beige, light beige. It wants to be something. It's the corner. So let me do the motion.
Please.
Okay, I'd like to submit this as for approval with conditions. That they continue or consider to explore the main entry with that stair, that staff, very successful and talented staff, would have the final say
It just needs a little bit of tweaking. I agree, it's a little heavy, it's not working. One. Twos, the trees, that the tree program be approved by Public Works, which they're going to do anyway, and you guys have a little battle to do with Public Works to see what kind of trees they put onto the streetscape. And three, to coordinate with the adjacent neighbor to protect their site during construction, and that's it.
And the wall
Oh, and
section?
then the sign program, then the sign program
Sign program.
to be a condition of approval to be returned for redesign, as many of these important buildings are, because it is an important program. Then we'll talk about national tenants and stuff back then. So I'd like to, yes.
Would you like to include the wall section? The half-inch wall section?
Yes, for staff to review.
Okay, so-
Yes, so that they can, and that's, I think, Liano, I think that's so important with this kind of architecture. Too big will look heavy, too small will look like, why did you even bother? I think that's a good suggestion.
Just to add a note to the section, that it's aligned next to an elevation to get a sense for what
Good point.
items are there. I second that motion.
Did that cover all of her?
Yeah.
That cover all? All right.
That covers everything. So I have a motion made by Board Member Insua, seconded by Board Member Yu. In terms of a roll call, Board Member Aliano?
I will vote yes, but I want to be on record that I have concerns about the blue.
All right, we will make sure concerns with blue. All right. Board Member Ellis?
Yes, my concern only is street trees, but yes, I
Okay.
support this.
Board Member Insua?
Yes.
Board Member Yu?
I'm concerned about the blue too, but I'm less concerned after I saw the choices that you had.
All right, so we'll make note that.
I understand what you're saying.
Board Member, we'll make note of Board Member Yu and Aliano's concerns, and Chairperson Simonia.
Yes.
The
It'll always
motion
be
passes 5-0.
I'll call it the
Insua blue.
Cuban flag blue. It looks
Call you
All
just
right.
like Glendale Caesar
No wonder I love
Pelly.
it.
Okay. Do you mind if we take a 2-minute
Not at all.
recess?
We'll take a 2-minute recess.
Thank you.
Thank you.
we are.
Very good. We are back. Our next case is 1-PDR-2007-071-A, 350 North Glendale Avenue. And we have Alan Malakian, the designer.
I'm sorry, we just had that case.
Yeah, we're doing Piedmont, I thought you were saying.
Piedmont.
But then we were just told that we were going to do Mr. Malakian's next.
Well, I was thinking doing that because we switched him around, and I think it was only fair that,
Oh, you're right.
I mean, Franco was not here, but we switched,
Oh, right, that's right, we were waiting for him.
right. So I think actually, he would have been out of here already.
There we go.
So as I was saying, our next case is
Even easier.
350 North Glendale Avenue.
Wait, not 350 North Glendale.
No,
We just
that's-
had
we just
350
did that
North
one.
Glendale.
Try another one.
500.
500 South, okay. So let us start over, because the agenda that I have had numbers next to it, and they were misnumbered, so I apologize. Our next case is 1-PDR-2007-141-A, 500 South Glendale Avenue.
Oh, but Chris Baxter's not.
Yes?
Chris Baxter is actually not here, so if you don't mind taking Jolly's case, which is back to the original.
I just saw him a second ago.
I can go.
Then let me make a
You know what,
suggestion that
yeah,
we
do
go
you
back
mind-
to
do you mind if we-
Piedmont.
Do you mind if we just continue the cases in order for Piedmont, if you don't mind?
So we go to
Okay.
Piedmont? All right.
He was sitting here when I got here this afternoon.
This is for staffing purposes also.
Gotcha.
So, actually, Jolly.
Well, for everyone at home, we apologize
I
for
know, we
all the
apologize for
confusion. And so 3 is a charm, and here we go.
Okay.
We only have 3. Our project is 1-PDR-2007-132-B, 2612 Piedmont Avenue. And does staff want to make our presentation?
Sure.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, the next project with the case number PDR 2007-132B is located at 2612 Piedmont and consists of demolition of existing one-story single-family residence and a detached garage and construction of two-story detached homes with attached two-car garages. This is in R3050 zone, and the lot size is 7,250. The project was reviewed by the board on February 21st, 2008, and these are the board comments and the way the applicant has addressed the comments. The first comment is add landscaping in front of the garage wall within the common open space. The applicant is proposing a recessed alcove with mosaic mural set inside it on the garage wall facing common open space rather than additional landscaping. Landscape area are proposing common open space. And I approached the board to show you what this is. These are the previous proposals. These are the latest, and this is the mural facing the common open space. The second point was propose heat roof on one unit and gable roof on the other, or just one type of roof to each unit. Do not mix gable and heat roof. Use of corbels should be consistent. Now, as you can see, all the gables roof are replaced with heat roof. Corbels are spaced consistently. The third comment was use the same color for each unit instead of the proposed two-tone scheme, which is the previous proposal. This is the latest, and the same color is proposed for both buildings throughout. The fourth comment was consider tandem parking to reduce the matting of the building, and tandem parking is not allowed in multifamily zone. The last comment is provide color site plan, and there is the color site plan provided. And this is the staff recommendation. The applicant has provided modification as required by the board. Staff recommend approval of the project. And this concludes my presentation. If there are any questions, I'll be happy to.
Any questions for staff?
No questions for me.
This one is for the front building?
This is Unit A, this is Unit B. So Unit A is the front, Unit B is the back.
I see, so Unit A, that's what's facing, so we see that here, right?
Unit A is the one you put here.
So they changed entry in Unit A? We don't have these double arches anymore?
Right, that's what it
Okay.
is. Yeah.
So that's this one.
Right,
And then that's the rear.
yes. Unit
And Unit B is the front.
Unit B is the one at the...
This one here.
Oh, no, this isn't a part of this project.
Oh.
Unit B is beyond.
Oh, in the back, I'm
Yes.
sorry, right. So Unit B is like this one here.
Right, exactly.
We're
And
seeing
this is the
that.
latest site plan.
Okay. Okay, and then Unit A, these are the side elevations of Unit B and A. B is this one, right?
Right, that's correct.
That. Right.
That's right, I put which elevation on
Okay,
each
this
unit.
elevation is this one.
Right.
That's,
This
one.
is that
That's this
elevation
one, right?
looking that way.
Top ones are
That's
for
the
this
key.
unit. So this little piece that we see overhanging here, basically,
Right.
Right, thank
Do we have any more questions? This little architectural detail is right here.
Well, it's
It's
not
on the edge of
actually
the-
shown on...
On this, I was trying to figure out if there was no...
Well, actually, it's here. This is the common open space, the space between the two
You're right, that's
buildings.
where you're
It would be right in here.
Exactly,
right.
I'm
So I'm
sorry.
wondering now if it's edged, or,
Yeah, but
It's
this
like a
planting
low-
is a little big for that area.
Right. My other question is, there's an existing city street tree, which, is that showing?
That might be.
Is this is the curb? No, that's the property line, so it's the sidewalk,
I
right?
guess
So
that-
there's another tree
Yeah.
someplace out in this area.
Applicant is just showing what is
On
under...
the property,
Yes,
not that
exactly,
existing tree.
Exactly.
I guess, is that tree going to be part of the irrigation plan? And I guess I'm asking this question because if you went by and looked at the lot, and the tree hasn't been watered. There's a city just recently planted. The one next door is in very nice shape, but that tree is needs some little attention. I'm kind of wondering, are they hoping that it goes away, or is it a...
I don't think
That's
they
a
are
question we'll ask them.
hoping that, but yeah.
Okay.
We have the architect Franco Noravian.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Franco Noravian, 409 West Broadway, Glendale, California, 91204. I'm the architect for the project. I think the biggest change you were hoping to see was the tandem parking. That would have really changed the look of the building and created more open space. But unfortunately, we're in a multifamily zone, and tandem parkings are not allowed. But I think what you're also trying to get at is to reduce the massing. So it's hard to notice, but I've tried to push the second floor back so you see a little bit more roof. And so I've tried to reduce the massing in that way. And also, I think going with all hip roofs reduces the massing a little bit as well. And also the front porch, as you were noticing it. What I did is I virtually eliminated the front porch. That's just a little archway over the front door. And by doing that, I was able to increase the open space between the two units another 3 feet. That's about all I have to say. Keep in mind, I know it's difficult where you're looking at these. You're looking at them as single-family homes, and you might say, well, it's too massive. But this is in multifamily area. So I think just the fact that we have separated them and we have two individual units is a positive, and it's going to be less massive than if we had had one big duplex.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
The extra one-car garage, is that because of code?
Yes.
You're required to have 3 units, three
Three
parking?
garages for a 3-bedroom. Yeah, anything over 2-bedroom. 2.5, I think 2.5.
2.5.
It rounds off to be 3. We can't do 2.5.
Yeah, 2.5.
So,
Yeah, I guess that half parking space is kind of, 10 years from now, you'll be putting cars in it. But, on this color plan and then the landscape plan, I noticed the trash cans moving around and the driveway's changing a little bit. Which one are you? For instance, here, that's your trash.
Right.
On this plan, it shows that it's actually set back, back in here.
There. Yeah.
Is that the intention, or?
No, the site plan probably more accurate.
This
That's
is more
the landscape
accurate.
plan.
So
Yeah.
okay, because it just seems to be.
This one's more accurate?
That's my site plan, and the other one is landscape architect. But if you prefer that, I can change my site
No,
plan.
it just seems to me it'd be a lot harder to make the turn into that structure with, I mean, I'm big on green, so the more green the better, but.
That's an area that I was going to make a comment. If this is the one, then we'll get to that.
Yeah, well, yeah, right.
Okay.
Okay.
I don't have any other questions.
Do we have any more questions for the architect?
Well, regarding, you were talking about the street tree, normally when I go through plan check, I deal with Public Works. If they have any conditions or comments for the parkway,
Yeah.
we'll address it at that
They'll
time.
address- I just noticed that, having gone out and looked at the site, that the tree is, pour some water on it, or have the owner water the tree, because the one next to it, obviously, the tenant or the people who live there have been watering it, and it's much healthier looking. That was just me being in the green.
Right. I'm not sure if all of you were at the last
I was
hearing,
not.
but something to note is that the property next door, which you currently see as a single-family home, will also be similar to this,
We saw
which
it.
which is up there. The future property next door.
Well, hopefully you get that tenant in, because they seem to be watering watering the street tree.
Yeah, I had a minor question. And it's kind of hard to tell, these overhangs over here,
Yes.
what is supporting them? What is that detail underneath it?
I think I have corbels there. I can't see
I
from
see, so you have corbels here and
Right.
corbels there.
Right.
Okay.
I eliminated, last time I had a cantilever from both sides,
Right.
but I don't have that anymore, so.
What about the surround around the windows, that brown, is that like a wood?
Wood trim,
Flat?
by 4, yeah.
By 4?
And they're wood windows,
So that wood trim gets painted like the color of the windows?
same color as the window.
Okay.
Do you have any more questions for the architect? Thank you.
Thank you.
And I have a card here from an Albert Guevara, and I'm not sure if it's regarding this case.
It is not related to that, it's a separate case.
Very good.
Thank you, Lou.
Thank you. So with that, I'd like to close the public portion of the hearing. Mr. Insua, do you want to start?
My only comment before, but I think it's been handled well, is that the back unit is 3 garages that are separate, and it adds a little bit of, a lot more hardscape that I would have liked to have seen in a project that's at a smallish site sort of lot, because we would have been able to have this not, because of the bedrooms and all that other stuff, this would have not been necessary, we could have increased landscaping and stuff, and we all love green, and there's,
Yeah, right.
no matter how good you pave a driveway, it's still going to be a driveway. But all in all, I think it's fine. My only comment is, and I did a little sketch for me, but we see it more in commercial buildings, but they work well, and I think they're going to work just fine on this one. This trash is probably going to need a hardscape because it's over grass and it'll probably be hard, but I would put 4 or 5 foot little wing walls on each side, and then little wood doors that match your garage, so that when people are, we're in that area, the trash enclosures are closed up like that. So, and then plaster those little wing walls, and then the garage, the trash enclosure doors cover it, so you're not looking at it. And I think that's very important with this one. This drawing shows it floating out there.
Right.
And that's bad, as you're so talented, you'll know that. 2 things that I would do is I would either integrate it into the building architecture, especially at
this location, if I got it right. Let me see, it's so hard. Yes, I think this is the rear. So imagine two little wing walls coming here, a nice little garage or double doors with the nice wood. I think you tuck it all in, especially if it's within this common area. Or if you didn't want to turn it in this direction, turn it this way, tuck it here so that you have the hard driveway, but at least you enclose it so you don't see trash cans and stuff. I think he did a great job with these private areas here and this area here, so I think it's a winner. I think it turned out nice for putting a large amount of development in a relatively small site. I think the landscaping is nice. I think this is okay. You know, in all, I think it's fine.
Mr. Yu?
I don't have much to say either. We saw it last time. Thanks for taking into account all the comments and the changes that you've made, and I'm happy as it is. So thanks.
Mr. Aliano?
Thank you, Franco. You did a good job.
Mr. Ellis?
You know, it's interesting, the extra garage, and look at it, the code's killing you. I understand why they do it. Nobody's going to be going out the side to put their trash, and I understand they're going to go in that extra garage. That'll be the storage unit, right? And you know, because you're going to roll out to the street.
Well, the good thing is they put the door off of the kitchen.
Yes,
so
they did. That may help it. That may help.
Especially with.
All right. I would support the project. I'm getting a little bored with brown houses. You see them around, driving around in this job and looking at places. I mean, I guess, is that the only color in California palette? Is it? I think it's better than yellow. Is that, you're better? How about white? Where did white come? Did that disappear? Even though, I don't know.
It went to Greece.
Yeah, I other than that, I really had no other comments. I think,
Sorry. It's not really brown, it's more like a
yellowish. I defer to looking at that, yeah. You're getting better. All right.
Very good, and I agree with my colleagues as well. There's been a drastic improvement from last time. You really took our comments into consideration, and we certainly appreciate it. And I think the building works quite nicely, and I think it's laid out in a thoughtful manner on the site. And so I could support the project as well. So do we want to entertain a motion?
Only with the two conditions of reorienting the trash enclosures.
There's one condition regarding the trash. But what is the second one?
Same thing. Oh, that was the only one.
Okay.
There was two trash.
Right.
Two
locations.
So there's two trash locations that are being reconsidered for relocation. One is the one in the rear, actually not relocation, but to put a fence around it.
Not a fence.
Wing walls
That
with
one,
the door.
actually, why don't we have staff take a look at that rear one, because there might be setback issues concerning that particular
Very
trash
good.
enclosure.
Okay.
So if you defer it to Jaleh, Stephanie, and myself, then
Okay,
we'll make
very
sure
good.
that
You
we
get the
meet the
intent.
intention. The wing
Yeah.
walls with some sort of screening for the trash to contain it. Okay.
They're going to hate you.
I make a motion.
That's what the motion was.
I make a motion to approve the project with that condition.
I'll second.
Okay. This is the motion was to approve with condition, and the condition is placing wing walls and wooden door to match the garage door to enclose trash cans. And this is roll call. Board Member Aliano.
Yes.
Board Member Yu.
Yes.
Board Member Insua.
Yes.
Board Member Ellis.
Yes.
Chairman Simonian.
Yes.
Motion passes by 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next case is 1-PDR-2007-141-A, 500 South Glendale Avenue.
Oh, hi.
I'll just take that down.
Yes, sir. Go right ahead. And here, Mr. Chair, why don't I just give you the photographs? While we're getting started, we got a letter here from a neighbor in support of the project. I'd like to just pass it out very quickly.
In support?
In support.
He lives.
Thank you. Lives in the neighborhood.
Thank you, Chris.
There you go, sir.
Thank you.
Promenade, this is your... All right, Mr. Chair, members of the board, if I may. Project is located here on this panel. The applicant, and I guess as you've read off, it's 500 South Glendale Avenue. The applicant is here for the first time being reviewed by the board. They're proposing a 5,120 square foot commercial building on a site that's located at the corner. And let me just show you real quick here on the location map. You can see it's the southeasterly corner right here. It's got a kind of a little irregular configuration. Southeasterly corner of Alameda and Glendale Avenue. The neighborhood in this area is, if you look here, will be C3 on all sides, to the north, south, to the west, and immediately to the east, which is over here. That's a commercial site. There is a small portion right here, though, that interfaces with a residential. So this area here is commercial, and there's a small portion right here, residential. If you look at your staff report, there's no environmental constraints related to the site that would prohibit or create difficulties for it to be built on. And they're going to demolish the existing service garage or repair garage that's located here at the rear of the property. The land uses, as you probably have noticed if you've driven by, we have a 4-story apartment building here, a single-family house here, and a residential building here. I believe the rest are commercial uses surrounding the property. We look at the urban design guidelines. This area is identified as the Glendale Avenue Commercial Study Area, which is characterized by mixed commercial and residential uses. And when we look at the categories, I don't know how much depth you guys need to go into, but very quickly, there's 7 categories from the site planning to physical design components. We have paving materials, roof forms, service facilities, walls, fences, signs, lighting, landscape characteristics. And overall, the planning staff felt that this project met the intent of the design guidelines for that in the urban design guideline text. And so we would be recommending that the project be approved with conditions as noted in your staff report. And I'll go through each of those conditions, and then we can go through some details here, possibly to back up and go through each of those categories that I referred to. For instance, when you look here along the street front, one of the things the applicant does well, or the project does well, is that it has a street edge and it interfaces with the street. But one of the things the guidelines like is that there's more individual unit articulation. So they have 4 individual units that they're proposing here, which I'm sure could be changed if you do some tenant improvements, but there should be, or the guidelines recommend more breaking up with the building facades. It's relatively flat. So that was one concern that staff had, and it's noted in our first comment. However, we felt in some ways, we also, back in our comment in the staff report, we also kind of noted that the applicant does a good job of changing materials, changing colors, changing some of the roof heights. And so in some ways it meets that. So we thought that was one reason why we thought we could just go with the recommendation for approval and maybe work with the applicant and see if he'd be willing to do some of that. Along the south elevation right here, this elevation right here faces this apartment building. And of course, as you're coming up the street, it's not really, you don't see much. And theoretically, if this is a C3 zone, and if this building was taken down, you could have a commercial property all the way up to the side of this wall. But we were thinking in the meantime, it probably might be good to have some more building articulation or treatment, architectural treatment. So that was another comment. Another thing is, if you look at the site plan, the design guidelines like to have some type of introductory paving here, and the applicant does show some here for the building, but it's not really identified. And here as well, not really identified, but it'd be something that we can work with the applicant on to maybe introduce something there for the site. If you look, one of the things that the staff and board has always been concerned about are the utilities, how they can be screened from public views, and so we try to work with the applicant for things like the backflow valves, gas meters if they need any, electrical panels and things of that nature. On the boundary wall, which we're going to have a boundary wall through here, like this obviously. They have a landscape plan, so they're showing their planting here, and staff was just going to ask for some additional details to make sure that the footing is deep enough so that you can get enough dirt in there so that the trees that they're proposing in landscaping will have enough soil depth to actually grow. Sometimes the footings of these walls are right at the very top of the soil, it seems like, and there's like 6 inches of actual dirt to plant on. So that was another condition that we asked the applicants to provide. And then we have the parking lot lighting. We'd like to work with the applicant on that. And other than that, it's like through. I'll be glad to answer any questions if you would like.
Do you have any other questions for Mr. Baxter?
I have one quick question for you. The property line is here?
Yes, sir.
Oh, so what is that access to?
That's an open, just an open landscape area.
It's not access to those
No,
apartments?
it's not a driveway.
Got it.
It's their property, but it's like a little landscape, maybe a
Set
walkway.
back from the building to their property line?
Yes, that's correct, sir.
Actually, I have a quick question. On the site plan and the plans, they've shown a straight line going across.
Right here?
I think, no, the building adjacent to it. But the actual building, I think, sets back after the front portion. And I was just wondering if that's the line of the furthest out or the back out.
That I don't know, sir.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah,
right.
Kind of breaks back. I don't know. I don't know whether that would be the furthest or not, sir.
Okay, thanks.
I did walk through here. I have to admit, I didn't look to see if it broke in that point, but it gives a fair impression of the relationship of the two buildings. Whether it sets back here or not, it still gives an overall fair relationship of how the buildings work with each other.
Great. Okay.
Is there anything else I can add?
So was there any suggestions for that facade?
Well, in terms of detailing, no, I didn't come up with any, and I think we, no.
Do you have any other questions for Mr. Baxter?
There's an MTA stop.
That's correct, sir. We have a photograph of it right here.
Is that, I mean, that's, I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah, it's on the rendering.
Oh, it's on the right. You know what, in the smaller rendering, I was wondering, because it seems like there's a pretty narrow bit of space between that and the building.
Yeah.
Okay. I know it wasn't on the site plan, that's why I was wondering. All right, okay. Thank you. I don't have that rendering. Oh, yeah, I do. Here it is. Yeah, here it is. Yeah, right, okay. It gets lost when I was looking at it, now I've realized.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Baxter. Yes, sir. We have the designer in the audience, Mr. Alan Malakian.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the board. My name is Alan Malakian. I'm the designer of the project. I had the opportunity to meet with Chris and Stephanie to review the project before it came in front of you. We've presented a previous rendition of this, and we tried to address most of the questions and concerns. And then I'm going to try to address some of these comments that the staff had, and I just wanted to agree with some of them and have a discussion about a couple of them. As far as the first one, to create articulation in the street facade, I'm not sure what else we can do to add more articulation to the front. I think one of the concerns and issues that staff had was pushing the building further back and so on and so forth, and maybe placing some planters and everything. But what we've tried, and they've suggested to actually extend the canopies further out from the building, which we've done so, and we need to go through the public works with that because it's going beyond the property line. But unfortunately, being that it is such a small development and the owner is basically battling and struggling, trying to get as much square footage as possible to be able to make this project pencil out, we've tried to play with the materials and the height of these parapets and introduce some wood siding and steel canopies and stone and plaster. And there's not much more we can do to this small little development. So I think we've met that, and I disagree with the first comment. I don't think there's much more we can do on the first one. As far as on the south elevation, I think this comment went out prior for this. Let me back up. Staff had the same concern when we met, and after the meeting, we've tried to add. It is going to be a skid wall. It is going to be built on the property and lifted up. The owners need to meet with adjacent property owners and try to come up with a deal to be able to go onto their lot on their side and try to plaster this. Our original design, we had a block wall, so I tried to eliminate all of that. We were just going to go and paint it. But we came back with the stud framing. We added some score joints. Being that the space between the building and our building is such a narrow space, I didn't really see a need for me to move the building back and lose square footage to be able to create more articulation. So I think by just adding the color and letting that mass continue in the front and breaking the front with the window and the canopy, I think that will solve the south elevation. I don't think there's going to be a lot of room for people to actually experience that area. As far as the decorating, I agree. I have no problem with that. We'll definitely go ahead and take care of that. I agree also with any kind of a metering and gas meters or anything. That generally will come once we apply for those utility requirements. Once we get those, we know exactly where the gas meter wants to go, and any of the valves or anything that the fire department requires, we'll definitely go ahead and address that, and we'll hide it within the landscaping, and we'll probably put a little wall there around that. As far as the boundary walls, split face block wall, I mean that would be probably one. We can go ahead and go a little bit beyond that and kind of create some horizontal banding of split face and so forth. There's not much of that variation unless we go with custom blocks, and I don't know if the board desires to get into that level of details for the perimeter masonry wall. As far as the parking lighting, absolutely. If we need to, being that it is a commercial property, adjacent property, we'll probably put some pole lights within the landscape area between the perimeter wall and the landscape area. Other than that, I think I truly believe that this is one of the properties in Glendale that definitely needs improvement. And so I think what we've tried to do is meet my client's needs and also come up with something, hopefully encourage other property owners around there to come up with something more quality and come up with something better.
I had a question now.
Yeah.
The planes that have the change in material, like the plaster and the wood, those are slightly offset.
They're absolutely, they're within 12 inches, they're definitely.
Yeah, that's the only question I had.
Right.
Thank you.
Is it as much as 12 inches? Because it looks
at certain areas, you can actually see on the north elevation, you can kind of see a tweaked perspective of the front elevation. There are areas that you can literally see a 12-inch depth where we have the windows that are going in and pockets. There are areas that there's going to be a little bit less than that when we have the wood siding. The stone veneer is going to be further out, the stone is going to be pushed in. So there's definitely going to be variations of material. I hate to bring two materials butting at the same point, so there's definitely going to be variations of the materials.
Mr. Milliken, is the plan that is being proposed on the bottom left corner, or is it the footprint that's depicted on the top two plans? Because the one on the left shows a lot of articulation.
Actually, what you see over there is...
on the left side?
On the left side is the older variation, and the one that you see on the top is what we try to do is we actually, there's a little bit of a history behind this. The plan that you see on the landscaping and the perspective is the original design, and it was almost 6.5, 7 feet taller, the building, and with that we were managing to go ahead and put in a mezzanine section on the south section, and thus bringing the square footage to what the developer was wanting. So what we did was, as you can tell on the perspective, the scale of the building has been dropped, and I think it's proportionally it works a lot better, thus eliminating the mezzanine section. So we try to push and pull as much as we can based on whatever limitations we had as far as the parking, setbacks, and whatever, to be able to get as much square footage as possible to at least make this project pencil out for them again.
So this perspective is actually not with the
perspective, the height of the perspective, it's actually on a 28-foot tall, the highest point, versus the perspective. We didn't get a chance to update the perspective versus the elevations. Yes.
The mezzanine concept was dropped because
it dropped. Well, the mezzanine, it was dropped, not the parking, but it was more of the height. Because we lowered the height, exactly. We exceeded not exceeded the height, but when you lower it by putting the mezzanine, just the headrooms with the slope of the roof and the pitch and all of that, it just didn't pencil out on that end. So it just didn't work out. So that's what we came up with. But we still managed to have the same articulation, same profile, the depth and the recessing.
Right. And so the top plan is the actual plan.
Exactly.
And,
yes.
And just the property boundary is such a thick line that it's kind of hard to tell. But there's a 12-inch.
There are certain areas that are 12 inch. There are certain areas 6 inches. There are certain areas that are less. And there's actually canopies that are projecting beyond the property line, which I will need the staff's help to go through the encroachment, as I followed their recommendation to do this. And So I'm sure we'll figure something out on that part.
Can you talk a little bit about, I mean, it's pretty obvious you've broken it up into sort of the AB look of it. The roof heights, they're all different. Is there?
There actually, if you look at the section, the roof is well, the
height of the parapets.
The parapets are different. We played with the parapets, but the actual
slightly
roof,
off from each other, right?
I think there's some dimensions there. I believe I have some dimensions.
Yeah, because I took note of it. It looks like the top one is 21.9. Second one is 20 foot 1 inch.
There's some variations of different heights of parapets that we try to kind of play with and trying to articulate different areas with not only by the middle with the corner, which has the stone and the wood siding, but the end piece has the plaster and the middle piece has the plaster, but yet again with the heights and the different details. So yeah, but the roof itself, the roof sheeting doesn't change. It's still constant. It goes back at the same slope. It's just a parapet.
Do we have other questions for Mr. Malikian?
No question. Just
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Concludes the public portion of the hearing. Mr. Ellis, you want to?
My turn to start? I talked to Mr. Malikian a little bit before everybody came in, and he explained some of the issues on the project. I think they're actually doing a pretty nice job of taking that commercial, breaking it up a little bit. My initial concern when I first looked at it, but then I realized, the code is 20 parking spaces. If you have 4 retail and you have 2 people working at each retail, there's 8 parking spaces that are out. Because of the being built as a retail, I'm kind of looking at staff. I mean, if the landlord at some points wants to put a restaurant in or something, I mean, there's going to be some issues with the city and zoning for that. Would that not be correct?
Yes, sir. Yeah, but initially, what the applicant can do is he can comply. If a change of use allows a restaurant in there, but right now I don't believe he can put a restaurant there based on his parking.
That would be the problem they run into. Where
Yeah. But in the future, if he comes in, he has a tenant space in there. Let's say at a nail salon, and nail salon leaves, and a restaurant comes in, they meet the standard that we have, you could have a restaurant there.
You could have a restaurant, right. The other issue, and again, it's all site-specific, is a little bit like our project up in North Glendale, where your entrance is right around the corner on a pretty busy street. But, all in all, I think they've done a pretty nice job, and I would support it as it. I think going back, as I'll back up, the issue with getting the encroachment for the awnings, because the awnings are really going to make the front of the building work. It's interesting, even though the parking lot isn't back, for me as a citizen, it's that street front that's really going to be the thing. I think people probably won't be using those doors as much. You'd like them to be, but they're going to be parking in back and going in. But it's important that front facade on the street gets the awnings and the things that we were talking about.
Thank you, Mr. Ellis. Mr. Aliano?
Great, thank you. I think it's great. I think you've done a good job. I like the site planning. I don't have any issues, and I agree. I think the building should be on the street like you have. And I really agree with the simple palette that you picked out for the materials, the plaster and the wood. I think the dark colors are quite nice. And the dark stone with the dark wood, I think, is going to be exquisite. And I'd hang out there. I think it's going to be a great place. So the variation, the parapet, there's slight variations. I'm sure it will work. And I can see why you did that. I think there's enough articulation on the elevation, like Mr. Baxter said, where the concept of individualizing each shop or each retail is going to be quite apparent. I mean, I don't think you need to do more than that. And I like the fact that your stucco, your plaster, and your wood is offset. So I think it's going to be, you've done a lot for a little project like this. I think you've done more than the Call of Duty. So commend you for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Aliano. Mr. Yu?
I too concur with my colleagues. I think that the project is definitely going to improve that corner what's there now. And let's see, the color palette, it's beautiful. I think the massing is well done. And I think it's a well done project, and the only things that I have are just little nitpicky things that, kind of just come as part of that. But I'm not too sure because it's such a small project to have these 4 different heights of, just maybe, because then there's like a hierarchy that's kind of there, but it loses some of that by mixing that up. The windows and where they're located, sort of where the lines are kind of there, but they're just slightly off of each other. Maybe making that a little more uniform. I understand that you have plaster glass canopy, you have, glass canopy plaster, but then they're all sort of, the lines aren't really there. They're just kind of missing each other by inches, and so it almost looks like a mistake rather than planned. I would maybe, just with the canopies, maybe the use of them and how they're being used sort of in this format, in this stucco, but not being used on that on the other side. Sort of the consistency of those things. I really like this detail of having sort of the recess with the canopy coming out of it, but then it differs as you go into the other side. Just sort of little things that come together in that sense. But all in all, I think the material palette is great. I don't know if 6 inches is going to do it here, especially with the stone at the base. The stone is going to protrude further out than the wood, and therefore it's probably going to eat up most of your, it looks almost like a 6-inch, and it kind of just takes away from that massing and articulating it separately from that. But those are details that, yeah, if you could push it in a little bit more, I think that would help that corner. But all in all, I mean, I think it's a great project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Yu. Mr. Insua? Would you consider blue? Blue wood.
Green, hey, now you
I think once, and again, I agree with all my colleagues that once you go down a design direction as this designer did, it starts leading for me into things that make sense. The color makes sense to the dark wood. The dark wood makes sense to the stone. And I think you see that, and when it's done so well, you get a good project. Those little things, you'll resolve them. Actually, you'll probably resolve them when you start drawing the construction details. You'll find out that one doesn't work with the other, so you do that. But all in all, I think it looks good. My only thing is I think this building will look good lit at night also. And I know that you've got these gooseneck lights somewhere. I saw some gooseneck lights, but maybe consider a wall sconce here to wash that wall there and there, so that when you don't have light at night in the stores, the building is still lit with some nice stuff. But other than that, I think it's really a good job, and I really like the use of that material. That dark material that looks terrific. It's going to look terrific.
Can you just add a little something? What do you guys think about it? Because on the site plan, this corner right here is very visible as you're coming up. Can we at least ask him to turn that crown over the side of it? So then that crown will at least fall.
Excellent point.
Okay.
Excellent point. Okay. Excellent.
It's just because it just ends right there. It's like a plane.
That's a good point.
But okay, you'll take care of it. Excellent.
Well, one thing, Mr. Insua, instead of sconces, would you, I mean, they're probably a little more expensive, and I don't know if they would be able to do it because you might be on the public way, but in-grade lights might be nice to just sort of shine.
That would be an idea, or there are these sconces that are actually flushed into the wall, and it's kind of caved in into the framing, so that could be something a little more contemporary in the light.
Yeah, looks good. Looks good.
Okay. Well, I agree with my colleagues, and I think the designer has done a wonderful job of integrating a lot of interesting and thoughtful ideas into a small project. And the colors and the materials is what really draws me into this. That modern mahogany is as illustrated on this material board, I think is just a great contrast next to the beige and next to the stone and the dark stone and so forth. So I think there's a lot of articulation that's created even with somewhat of a sterile building, just with the materials and the parapets and so forth. There's just a lot of excitement that's created. And what also is very successful is the signage. You've done a wonderful job of integrating a very vertical-oriented font, and it's very delicate, and it looks like it's going to be lit from behind, which will create some sort of a shadow as well, because it looks like the light's coming down an angle. But that might just be the sun, but whatever the case might be, I think it goes really well. So I certainly could
add one more thing.
Of course.
And I want to also commend one of the comments that you were saying, that as you were working through the design, one of the things you were trying to explore was the mezzanine. And then when you started looking at the proportion of the building, the ratios and the height, it just started looking way out of proportion. And how you were able to successfully talk the client out of that for the purpose of good architecture, you should be commended. Often it's a hard battle. So I think, the ratios work really well here, not before.
Mr. Chairman, as well, I just want to mention the sign program is not part of this project. They will be coming back.
Well, I think if they come back with it, it would be a good addition to it, because it certainly complements the design well. Yeah. And so if it comes back even more thought out, then I believe that will just be a positive for us. So I certainly could support this project as presented.
Move for approval.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion with Mr. Aliano.
Oh, there was the one condition about the wraparound of the crown molding, right?
Right, and also pushing back the elevation of the...
Right. Now, if I could, this is what I, if I may, wrap... molding. I had several conditions, but I don't need to put any of them on there unless you guys want me to.
I think my motion will only have two things on it, right?
2 things? Okay, fine.
Cornice, and then what was it pushing back?
A little more of a...
Just a little more space between the stucco portion versus the wood.
I had,
I think it already has it covered, but that's okay. I'll move with those two conditions. I think that's enough.
Just one comment on the wrapping
the public
around.
portion
Sorry.
again. If you would state your name for the record.
Alan Malik. Just one quick comment. Wrapping that around, we may end up...
Property line?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're going to go beyond the property line, so we may end up pushing the wall back in. So we'll try to do whatever we can.
Maybe a flattened
You can
version
score
or
it.
something.
Yeah,
that
or
turns the
Put a reveal, two material.
I think we may do that, or
Yeah,
if
thank you.
that's the case, then I may just change the cornice top piece to go with the more of a flatter
That's okay.
Cap.
so that we can. So I don't know.
I like the flat cap idea.
Ivan didn't like it, so
Huh?
yeah, like a metal cap with a reveal around it, so something that can be carried around that is flush with the building.
That's fine with me.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, that second comment about wrapped crown moldings, I don't have that one. Where did you have that in mind? So I'm clear.
South elevation, southwest corner.
This one turning the corner to address this corner here.
Oh, okay, all right. And how far over, sir, would you think would be
All the way
appropriate?
around.
All the way around?
Because it'll
Okay.
look weird if it just stops halfway.
Okay, very good. So then I have these two conditions, one about how I wrote it was consider, I use the word consider. Do you want it mandatory as wrap, or consider wrapping, consider recessing walls where different materials interface to allow them to wrap appropriately?
I think that's already been done. It's already part of the project. But,
Okay.
we can keep that in there. I
When it is
think
a-
it already has a difference in the material.
Well, I guess I'm asking for a bigger
Yeah,
recess.
but then
in
you're
those
reducing the
doors.
square footage of the building.
Well,
which,
we've done it before. I don't.
Well, there's about 10 inches, right? 10 inches to a foot between the
It
wood
doesn't
and-
look like 10 inches on that rendering.
We can't have
Need to
cross
speak,
communication.
sorry.
Well, why don't we just say at least 12 inch difference?
That sounds good.
Okay, so 12-inch
Because that
difference.
will work.
Yeah, that's
So
fine.
that's
Yeah,
one,
that's fine, easy.
12-inch difference, and then the other would be to wrap crown moldings around the south elevation, to be consistent with the rest of the building. And those would be the two conditions. I have a motion by Mr. Aliano, and a second by, I believe that was Mr. Insua?
Yes.
Okay, roll call. Mr. Aliano?
Yes.
Mr. Ellis?
Yes.
Mr. Insua?
Yes.
Mr. Yu?
Yes.
And Mr. Simonian?
Yes.
So it'll be 5-0, approved with conditions. With those two conditions.
Our next item on the agenda is approval of minutes from April 3, 2008.
Actually, before we proceed on to the end of minutes, do you mind, it appears that we did not have a motion or a second or a roll call in terms of a continuance for the 1062 Allen Avenue project.
So should we open that very
So if
quickly?
you don't mind, just go ahead and move for a continuance.
Yes.
I have a motion by Board Member Aliano and a second by
Yes, second.
Board Member Insua.
Sure.
And in
Ellis.
term,
Okay.
oh, forgive me, I wasn't,
Okay.
Ellis.
did not
Either
even
of
look
us.
up on
We
that,
look-
so
we look-
thank
yeah.
you.
Yeah, with
A
an
motion
eye
by
on it.
Board Member Aliano, a second by Board Member Ellis. In terms of a roll call, Board Member Ellis,
Yes.
Board Member Insua,
Yes.
Board Member Yu,
Yes.
Board Member Aliano,
Yes.
Chairman Simonian.
Yes.
The motion passes to continue to a date certain. This would be the first item on today's agenda. So, now, going back to approval of minutes for April the 3rd. You should have received them via email.
Not at that meeting.
I believe I had the minutes with one correction about the speakers, which if that correction is made, I could move to approve the minutes.
A motion
I
made
second.
by Board Member Ellis, seconded by Board Member Yu. Board Member Ellis?
Yes.
Board Member Yu?
Yes.
Board Member Simonian? And then I believe Board Member Insua and Board Member Aliano would be abstaining in this
That's
case.
right.
Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. The motion passes 3-0. Oral communications, I believe that we do have one speaker card, and you should have
Correct.
received that.
We have Mr. Albert Guevara.
Oral communications.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. For the record, it's Albert Guevara. And
Well, thank you for sitting through
Yes.
3 hours.
very instructional. I got to tell you, it's one of the best things that could have happened because I've seen what the motivation behind the Design Review Board is, and I'm happy that after 33 years of living in this beautiful city, it's in good hands. Okay? Unfortunately, what I bring to the table tonight is not an improvement. It's actually a deterioration of a design and character of a neighborhood. In particular, it's my house. My wife and I have owned this house over the last 9 years, and it's at 2027 Dublin Drive in Emerald Isle. My neighbor who owns the flag lot contiguous to mine and behind my house, 2023, took out a permit, and it was issued without you folks having an opportunity to review what was being done to the property. And I've got some photographs here. I wanted to show you first what the present view of my home is, and if you would allow me to show you what is happening to it.
By all means. Can we trip the light? Is it possible? A little bit, or knock it in?
Yeah, I think you get a better...
Thank you. Yes.
Okay.
And also, the mouse moves from the podium.
Oh, wonderful, good. So let me take that up. Good, that'll make it better. Okay. Not used to having a huge computer that far away. Okay.
Now, this is your home.
This is my home. This is 2027. I'm trying to...
Your arrow's at the top right corner.
Near the X.
It's not moving.
Looks like it's frozen.
Stop.
Oh, there it is.
It's a very stubborn...
You probably might want to put something underneath.
A pad, yeah.
Is that what it is?
It is
Okay.
more helpful.
There you go.
There we go. Okay. Okay.
Not working.
You might want to use one of the computer pads.
Let me just do this over here.
You have to speak at the microphone.
Yeah, I just want to get it going here. Okay.
Sir, you're going to have to speak into the microphone. And I think staff actually has a mouse pad we could provide you so you could do your presentation over at the podium.
Next.
I apologize.
Yeah, we can do that next.
Next slide.
Now you have all your tools.
Okay, right here, this is where the existing wall is, and the gentleman is building that wall, an 8-foot wall with a 10-foot fence that is going to go across this front lawn, which sits right now in front of my property. Along the where you see the bushes, and it would. Whoops. We stop that. It goes in. This is really the mouse doesn't work.
Look at that.
You want to just tell me how to...
Is there's no way that he can use this microphone up here?
Sure.
Down here to sit right
If we
there?
could do that, yeah, it would make matters a
This
lot.
way.
Can we do that?
But you could actually go
Go
around
around, yeah.
on your right side.
Here. So, there's a flag lot with a little bit of grass. There you go.
All right. I think this is better. Okay. So this is my house, and then he's building the wall, extending it from the existing wall, which is here, and he's extending it to where it's 19 feet from the property line at the street. Let me go to the beginning of this. I apologize. What I wanted to demonstrate here is that I went around the neighborhood and saw other properties with flag lots and saw where the gates had been built, and there was not a single property that I could see where the gate had been built in front of the structure of the house. Though this meets zoning and code, it certainly affects the design and the overall character of the neighborhood. It'll certainly be destroying all of the bushes here, and it'll destroy this tree, which is part of the original design of the home, which is a match to the tree here that's on the other side. So by virtue of him being allowed to build this wall, all of this will be destroyed, and there will be this huge wall that'll be sitting here. One of the things, I'm in real estate, and one of the things that we look at is curb appeal of homes. Certainly this will have a negative impact, a huge negative impact on the value of my home, and definitely a huge negative impact on the character of the neighborhood. And I'm really concerned that the permit was issued and the design review requirement waived for this gentleman without anyone ever looking at this project. Nobody even coming out to visit the home and see what it would look like. I was not aware that this was going to happen until the one day when the work crew was out here. They were starting to dig, And I asked him what they were doing, and the workers asked me, hasn't the owner talked to you? And I said, absolutely not. I came out and came to Building and Safety around the 15th of March, requesting for this to stop so that I could then bring it either to City Council or to the Design Review Board, and that request has been denied of me. What we have now currently, where the project is now, I'd like to show you that. And again, I'm showing you some of the other ones. You can see this red line down here. That's where that wall is going to go, and certainly it'll destroy this tree, okay? And it'll go straight across this. This doesn't really show it. This actually goes down a little bit further because it doesn't have the right angle. There was already an existing wall here, and I didn't have a problem had he built a retaining wall such as he did here and build it further back to where it would not protrude into my front yard, you know?
The wall on this side will end parallel to the edge of that wall that we're looking at?
It will, except, yes.
So it's where that little bush is more or less right there?
No, because of the angle of the picture, it really won't.
Further towards the property line?
To the front. Further to the front, correct.
Okay.
Yeah, it's because of the angle. As you can see, I'm taking it at an angle. It is actually 19 feet here. This gives you a better idea. It'll actually be like right around here. Yeah, it'll be about 19 feet is where he has, 19 feet from the curb, actually from the property.
That's the setback is 19 foot.
Yeah, well, the setback is 15. He's building it 19 feet.
Right.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but certainly way in front of my house.
And I think
boxing my house in.
Just as a practical matter, the timing had not started when you started your presentation.
No, it had not started at all.
There is a 3-minute time limit, I believe.
Okay.
Well, I'm sorry.
So if you would try to conclude.
Okay, well, what I'd like to do is put this on the agenda so that they can then make a full presentation. What I'd like to do is to have this work stop now so that we can have a good review of this. If the gentleman is allowed to continue, the wall will be up and then it'll be a greater problem. I've hired a law firm to look into this, and the letters have gone out to the city attorney and everybody at city council. But I think the reasonable thing to do would be to say, hey, let's put a stop to this now, let's look into this thing, and then make a decision.
Right.
I don't mind a compromise.
Sure. And as I don't know if you're aware of this fact, but this very subject was really brought up and discussed at City Council this last Tuesday.
I was there.
Very good. So you're aware that City Council is currently looking at what should qualify a project for it to come in front of a design review board, and so at what point does staff have the authority to waive that requirement. And there's going to be another meeting as well next Tuesday where other similar matters are discussed. So what I think is what you're pointing out is something that is being discussed at the highest level at the city. And what I would perhaps encourage you to do is to go to oral communication, speak to them about this fact, and in so doing, they will take that into consideration as they start looking at the rules and so forth going forward.
And I've already been invited to come back next Tuesday, and I shall do so. The concern that I have right now is that by next Tuesday, this project will have been completed.
I understand.
That's the problem.
Chair, did you note that you have spoken to the city attorney?
I have not spoken to the city attorney. My attorney sent him a letter today. And,
okay, well, communication has occurred between your...
There was a comment made by this gentleman whose name I don't know.
Mr. Foy.
Mr. Foy, regarding the city attorney having been made aware of this, and he had a comment, if you wouldn't mind sharing it with him.
Well, let me say first off that this is not an agendized matter, so you probably should refrain from expressing much opinion about it. You are free to ask for information. There is no provision in the code that allows the Design Review Board to appeal staff-issued DRB exemptions to itself. As I did speak to the city attorney, generally speaking, if someone has relied in good faith upon a city-issued permit and they have expended considerable funds and started construction, then the city's options for rescinding that approval become much more limited. I do not really have a final opinion from the city attorney, but that's the legal context in which he would be looking at it.
I can imagine that this commission, I can't speak, are powerless at this point, since we are a design review authority, and unless something has gone through the normal process that we all have, there's really not much we can do or say at this point. But as a comment,
I don't think we're supposed to comment.
yeah, right. As a comment, I would say that, no, let me just finish. That there are some concerns, obviously, but the comment is we're the wrong board. We don't have, I can imagine, the authority. We can only review what's presented to us.
Unfortunately, you were not given that opportunity, neither was I.
And I think what's the timing's of the essence in that, fortunately, this thing was agendized a while ago as far as the discussion in City Council as far as what should be exempted from DRB. And that is occurring right now. And so I think as you went there, from what you stated last week, and you're going to go again, I think you're doing all you can do at this point and with communication with the city attorney.
Right.
So at that point, I think we should move on from this subject on to the next agenda item. And I do appreciate you taking the time to come here, especially when you had to sit through 3 hours of yawning, perhaps, presentations for you, but for
No,
us,
not
it was,
really. They were very
important, so-
educational. I'm in the business of real estate, and this is all very important and very educational, as I said. And finally, what I'd like to state is I want to thank all of you for taking the time, and I know you've given me much more than what I was allowed, so I appreciate that. It's in the hope that this doesn't happen to someone else, because to get to this point and never having had an opportunity to have you look at it and hopefully see how monstrous this thing is, I don't think you would have approved it.
Well, we appreciate it, so thank you very much.
Can I ask him a couple questions for my own curiosity?
Do you want to do it afterwards?
Okay, I'll ask you later.
Yeah, afterwards. You could perhaps ask them. That'd be wonderful. So the next item is staff and board business and discussions and so forth. Is there anything on that item?
The one announcement that staff has is we have an alternative assessment panel, an AAP panel scheduled for May the 1st, starting at 3 p.m. We will be discussing 1340 Virginia Avenue. Board members Alice and board member Insel will be representing board number 1 at that AAP panel. And again, it will be starting at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and at 5 o'clock, the regular design review board number 1 will be starting its regular schedule.
Was I correct that you said that you would be providing a late lunch?
We can definitely discuss that matter. Late lunch, early dinner.
One other item to discuss afterwards.
We will definitely.
As an enticement.
Yes, and but we do, before you leave, before you adjourn, we do have another announcement from Stephanie Reich, unless you have a comment made.
No, I thought, didn't your council member who appointed you tell you that they would feed you at these meetings?
I seem to remember something like that, yes.
Gentlemen?
Well, we do have apples and cookies on the table. I did want to follow up and say that we did present to the council on Tuesday the DRB exemptions, the grounds for making those exemptions. I don't believe that will be an ongoing discussion. The council was very pleased with what they heard from staff regarding how we are, the analysis and the criteria that we're providing for the exemptions. The community also supported staff in that. Next week, on the 22nd, we'll be bringing a much briefer staff report to the City Council because they asked us to consider options for joint study sessions with the Design Review Board. So that might be a matter of interest to you as well. Thanks.
Thank you.
With that said, I believe that there was a motion for adjournment on behalf of Board Member Ivan Insua's
birthday.
Yes, correct. As he bids adieu to his
happy birthday.
First
42 again?
The Sheriff John birthday song this week?
No.
If you care to start it off, Board Member Ellis.
I grew up in California, so I'm not.
3 Aries in this board, right? Your birthday too? My birthday was a week ago or so, so we have 3 Aries.
We're grateful for the dedication of our board
Yes, thank you
members.
very much.
Considerate, patient, understanding.
Yes, and all that.
Is that it?
So happy birthday, Board Member Insua.
Happy birthday.
And wait, was that Board Member Simone, and you also had a birthday? Is that correct?
A week ago.
So we have Board Member Ellis, Board Member
was the only one
Insula,
that
and
dressed
Board
up.
Member Simonian. So, and best wishes to all of you in good health. So,
Thank you. Happy birthday,
you-
gentlemen.
would you like to move to adjourn before Board Member Ellis leaves?
I move we adjourn. He's not one for formalities.
All right. Thank you very much.
Good night, guys.
Good night.
Good night.